Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was a student of Itachi and he loves Sakura part 1? And subscribe if you enjoy the video. And also check the description. So let's begin the story. A small boy dashed through the deserted streets, his breathing labored. Running from some unknown peril, tears were streaming down his cheeks, blending with the mud that was caked to his face. Along with this, blood from various cuts and gashes mixed with the substance, creating a disgusting combination. It dripped from his chin, leaving an almost unnoticeable trail behind. Almost. He ducked into a narrow alleyway, skidding to a stop behind a large stack of stock crates. He fell to his knees and hugged them close, praying that they wouldn't find him here. He waited silently in the quiet, desperately trying to control his ragged breathing before they neared his hidden location. A few moments later, his suspicions were proved. Footsteps thundered past the opening to the alley, the flickering light from the torches illuminating faintly against the dark. "Where is he, the little freak?" A gruff voice spat, angry that his target was missing. "The trail ends here." Another voice relayed. The child flinched. He had left behind evidence. Evidence that could lead them to where he was now. Maybe he ran down here. Hid behind one of the trash cans. An unknown figure suggested, stepping into the dark doorway. The boy tensed, preparing to make another dash. "Hold on. I think I see him." A woman's voice called, sounding far off. "Come on, everyone!" The apparent leader shouted, "Death to the demon!" A man yelled, gaining a chorus of war cries and agreements in response. Soon, the noise faded into night, leaving the child alone to wallow in his misery. "They do not understand your worth," a voice murmured, sounding from all directions. The boy's head snapped up and glanced wildly around the area, searching for the voice's owner, and possibly, his next attacker. "They only fear what you cannot and could not control," the figure said again, seeming closer now. The child whimpered, squeezing his body into the smallest target he could make it, and braced for the blow. "Fear not, I do not seek to harm you," the man's voice called. Out of the shadows, a teenage boy appeared, his shoulder-length raven hair tied into a small ponytail. He had droplets of blood covering the ANBU uniform he was currently wearing, and a leaf shinobi handband had a long scratch going through the symbol. "Who are you?" The fair-haired boy stuttered in question, his eyes wide, his defensive position never failing. The teen smiled softly. "My name is Itachi Uchiha. I have been watching you for some time now, and I can definitely say you have some promise," he explained. "You already show signs of great talent, and you will become something of greatness, with proper training," Itachi continued. The boy only looked on in cautious confusion, unsure of where the seemingly friendly teen was getting at. "Let me ask you, do you hate the way these blind villagers have treated you?" the Uchiha prodigy asked. Not even having to think about his response, the child nodded, slowly uncurling himself from his protective stance. "That's why I want to be Hokage," he answered simply and quietly. Itachi nodded understandingly. "Oh, but to change these villagers' opinions, you will have to become something even more. A legend," Itachi explained. "A legend," the boy repeated, mulling this over in his mind. "If you come with me, I will train you all I can. I will make you the greatest ninja there ever lived, greater than all the Hokages combined. You will be the best, the legend in children's bedtime stories. All you have to do is leave this village, with me," Itachi offered. The boy bowed his head in thought, the spiky blonde strands falling over his eyes. Could he really leave the village hidden in the leaves? With someone he'd meet only a few moments ago, could he really trust this Itachi? Of course he wanted to become great. It was his lifelong dream. He'd do anything for that ambition to come true, even if that meant dying in the process. He glanced up at the Uchiha, his gaze hard and strong, one of a great ninja in the making. "I will follow you anywhere, if that means my dream will be realized," the boy answered in a firm voice, standing from his corner, his sapphire eyes glinting boldly. Itachi smirked. "Then come with me, Naruto Uzumaki. Today, we begin." Today, the legend is born, and on that night of October 10th, an ANBU captain and a small child left the village, unnoticed, into the darkness of the outside world. "Are you glad to be coming back?" A raven-haired man asked, his face shadowed by the casa on top of his head. The boy next to him smirked, his blonde hair blowing in the slight breeze. Ecstatic, he replied, the sarcasm in his tone deep. Naruto had certainly changed in the 8 years he had been on the road. He sported black capris, going just below his knee line. He was wearing a dark orange shirt underneath a black jacket, which was halfway unzipped. He was also wearing a necklace that consisted of 3 red tomes, almost exactly like the Sharingan. He had grown much, making 5 feet even. His blonde hair had only been cut a few times during the last couple of years, the spiky bits ending right above his eyebrows. Strapped firmly to his back was a single sword, sheathed in a case of firm leather. Naruto, now that I have trained you, and given you the knowledge and skills to become the greatest legend of all, there is something I want you to give me in return, Itachi said, glancing at his pupil beside him. Naruto nodded. Anything for you, Master Itachi. He answered simply, his voice soft. Itachi smirked. The boy would do anything if it meant pleasing him. It was a very good thing. Okay, my intentions are easy. I wish to destroy Konoha. And I need you to do it, from the inside. Itachi explained, measuring the boy's response intensely. Naruto just shrugged. No problem. Any details? He asked. Itachi nodded. That was fairly easy. I have a few alliances I still need to work out. I'll let you know soon. Just keep your radio with you at all times. The Uchiha replied. Naruto nodded again in understanding, the gates coming up on them fast. They cast long shadows along the ground, signifying that it was close to noon now. Now, this is where I take my leave. I am a disbanded ninja, while you were only presumed dead. You will be undercover as a genin here, so you will be put in their class. And whatever you do, don't show them everything you know, Itachi instructed, turning to leave. Naruto bowed, his eyes closed respectfully. Yes, master, he replied, watching as his friend and former sensei vanished into the black. Now one of the Leaf Village's weak, pathetic ninja would be his teacher. He rolled his eyes. Pathetic. He whipped around on his heel, the movement like a fluid dance as he was so good on his feet now. He strode confidently through the gates, right past the guard booth, not even bothering to stop. Excuse me, I need to see your pass. One of the guards, Genma, called after him. The blonde turned slightly, just enough for the guard to see his face, and continued to walk away. Immediately, the Chunin was silent, his jaw dropped. What? What is Genma? Kotetsu wondered, curious as to why the one intruder caused the man to stiffen into stone. TT, that's Naruto Uzumaki. I'd recognize those whisker-like scars anywhere. Genma stuttered, his face white. Kotetsu's eyes widened. Didn't he die 8 years ago? The bandaged shinobi questioned, staring after the boys retreating back. Genma shook his head in denial. No, he disappeared. But after almost a year of no response, Hokage-sama closed the case and labeled him deceased, reluctantly of course. You know, he always had a heart for that boy, although no one could ever figure out why. The senbon-chewing man replied. So, he's back. Kotetsu yelled, standing up in utter surprise. We need to contact the Hokage, he added, scanning the area for a nearby patrol. Calm down, Kotetsu. I'm sure the boy is on his way there now. I mean, he's going to want to jump right into the academy, although he will be so far behind. I'm not sure if he'll ever be able with this year's class. Gemma said, catching his partner by the arm. The other Chunin sighed. Yeah, you're right. He's never going to that exam, not without Irika's training. And with only 1 day to go, the poor boy's got no hope. Kotetsu answered, chuckling a bit. Little did they know, one of Konoha's most dangerous villains was hiding in a tree overlooking the guard station, smirking softly. Little do you know, is that Naruto can and will exceed you all. And then, your precious village will fall. The old man Hokage was bent over his slowly depleting pile of papers. He stamped his approval on one and then turned to the next, sighing heavily. I'm getting too old for this. I think my back will forever be in this scrunched-over position after the day I retire. A steady knocking interrupted his thoughts, snapping him back into reality. Come in, he commanded, his voice a little raspy from disuse. He glanced up, looking to see the ninja that needed his assistance, and who he saw standing there made him almost jump out of his chair in surprise. But he was positive his bones wouldn't move that fast. The little blonde Jinchuriki that disappeared so long ago, the boy he thought he had lost. Yandame's last and final wish. Although the small child he remembered had changed considerably. Naruto, what a surprise! The Hokage said, smiling widely, the wrinkles around his eyes crinkling into the expression. The boy didn't respond to the gesture at all. He only stood in the doorway, his face blank. I've come to you on a request, he stated simply, walking up to the chair in the center of the room, silently leaning back. Needless to say, Sandaime was shocked by the boy's cold nature. He had always been a smiling, warm-hearted kid in the past. But he had been gone for almost a decade. Many things had changed. Not exactly good changes though. Yes, Naruto, what is it? He replied, placing his elbows on the wooden desk and resting his chin on his hands. I want to enroll in the academy, to become a registered genin of the Konoha Shinobi. The Ceruleanite affirmed, his stature stiff and robotic, as if he had been trained to remain absolutely still. 8 years ago, the child had always had a problem keeping motionless. He'd fidget or shift in his seat almost constantly, his eyes darting around the room, as if looking for a way out. The Hokage shook himself out of his thoughts. He needed to stop thinking so much about the past. This was now, and this Naruto was real. Well, Naruto, I think that's a wonderful idea, but you are much too old to be placed in the beginning classes. I want to be put into the graduating class of this year. Naruto added, gaining a shocked response from the old man, twice in one visit now. And Naruto, that's impossible. I know you must have had some training while you were gone, but you would be way too behind to just jump into the know. The graduation exams are tomorrow. There's absolutely no way you'd make it, not with the disadvantage you're at. He sputtered, utterly surprised that he'd want to skip so far ahead. At least that trait had remained with him after all this time. Naruto's frown deepened. I can assure you, my skills are more than enough to pass your tests, Naruto declared, crossing his arms tightly across his chest. The third Hokage clenched his jaw, deep in thought. After a few moments of quiet, he dug to the bottom of the filed paper pile and produced a rather large file. This is a file that contains information on all of the academy students that will be participating in the tests tomorrow. There is only one spot left in this class, and even though I believe that you will be at a very high disadvantage, I will send you to Irika. With you, you will bring a message from me, saying that I approve of your acceptance and full permission to participate in the graduation exams tomorrow. Lucky for you it's review day, so at least you'll have 24 hours to cram. The Sandaime said, a small smile stretching across his face, withered with age. The blonde before him nodded, standing up in a fluid line motion. The Hokage swiftly wrote the note to the scarred Chunin and handed it to the newest addition to the graduating class. And with that, Naruto, the returned Jinchuriki, vanished into thin air. Astonish crossed the old man's face quickly, but it disappeared in an instant, replaced by a soft smile. Ah, Naruto. It will be interesting to see what you have learned from this winning teacher of yours. And that is how the first great ninja war came and ended. Now, this was the beginning of the year's material, so if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask, a Chunin said to his class, ending just as the bell for lunch rang. He had a scar running across the bridge of his nose, probably from a battle long ago. His cloth 19 students fought and quarreled, trying to be the first out the door. He sighed. Even 6 years later, they still acted like children. He always loved these 30 minutes of quiet. It gave him some time to collect his being and focus on the next lesson, and ultimately, keeping his pupils' attention. This was a unique bunch, these kids, but definitely had its run of troublemakers. They would all be great ninja if they just took it seriously once in a while. The sliding door silently opened, drawing the Chunin's attention from his thoughts. A blond boy, looking to be around 12 or 13, walked calmly into the room, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Irika gave him a once-over, noting some of his unusual characteristics. Like the fact that he had whisker-like marks scored across both cheeks. He could only remember one person that had those kinds of scars, and the boy had disappeared 8 years ago. Could it be? The boy slid a piece of paper across the desk to the gawking teacher, scanning the room in boredom, taking in his surroundings. Quickly examining the message, Irika's eyes widened. Irika, the boy you see before you now is none other than the missing child from long ago, Naruto Uzumaki. He came to my office only minutes ago, requesting that he be put into this year's graduating class. I seriously doubt that the boy will be able to pass the exams, due to the fact that he only has 1 day to learn all the material he needs to know, but I have decided to give him a fair shot. I can plainly see that the child has received some training from someone. I do not know at this time who, but I'm not sure if it would be enough. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. The Sandaime. To say Irika was shocked was an understatement. He was completely flabbergasted. Here was Yandaime's final wish, returning from the dead, wanting to jump right into the village's ninja forces. Taking a better look this time, the Chunin could see that he had changed very much from the time he had seen him last. Well then, Naruto, there's only about a few more minutes of lunch break, so you can take a seat anywhere you like, Irika said. The blonde nodded in response, sliding quietly into a seat in the front row. Resting the back on the desk behind him and placing his feet on his desk, he began to rock back and forth in a slow motion, calmly awaiting his Koto return. Hey Sasuke-kun, you're going to sit by me this time, right? A pink-haired girl cooed, running up to a dark-haired boy's side, bouncing up and down. He glanced over at her and rolled his eyes. Couldn't these girls ever give him a break? No, he stated darkly, picking up his pace, trying to get away from the nuisance at his side. The girl wilted, struck out again, but just as it looked like he was going to get away, his other number one fan tackled him out of nowhere. Sasuke-kun! A long-haired blonde yelled, enveloping him in a lung-crushing hug from behind. The poor teen struggled to free himself, desperately wanting to avoid the explosion that was inevitably going to follow. What are you doing to my Sasuke-kun, Ino pig? The pink-haired girl spat, marching up to the two. What did you mean you're Sasuke-kun? He's mine, forehead. She yelled in return, dropping from the raven-haired boy's back to confront her rival. Nula! He's in love with me! The cherry blossom cried. You're just a delusional Sakura. He's in love with me and everyone knows it. Ino screeched. Both girls whipped around, ready for a race to attack the yummy Uchiha, but disappointingly to them, they could see his retreating back many yards away. With one final glare, the two broke out into a dash, competing to see who would get to the prize first. A cluster of students squeezed their way through the door, all trying to get in at the same time. Immediately, they all noticed the blonde boy waiting patiently in the first row, his hands behind his head and his eyes closed. A teen with a dog on top of his head quietly danced over to where the boy was resting and motioned for everyone to be quiet. He leaned down, reaching out to tip the chair back and send its passengers sprawling onto the ground. Don't even think about it, Naruto growled, causing the kid to scramble backwards in surprise. I thought you were asleep, he exclaimed. Naruto smirked slightly. Not everything is always as it seems, he answered, watching uninterestedly as the rest of the students filed in, taking their seats and waiting for Irika to return. A dark-haired boy tumbled into the room, followed by a pink-haired girl and a blonde one, all of them landing in a tumbled heap on the floor, with Sasuke on the bottom. Sasuke, tell her! The blonde one yelled, her bangs spread messily across his forehead due to the tussle. Her light blue eyes were alight with determination and fury, her long blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail, and ending right above the small of her back. No, you tell her! The other one screamed, glaring at the girl on top of her. Her light pink hair flowed to her shoulder blades, and her eyes were a subtle green, shining with the same expression as the blondie. The poor boy pinned underneath them had dark charcoal eyes, complemented by raven black hair. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So, this is Itachi's little brother. Doesn't look like much. Get the hell away from me. Sasuke grunted, pulling himself out from underneath the pile of fangirls. Naruto scoffed. Pathetic, he muttered, rolling his eyes at the scene that was taking place. Sasuke whipped around, his eyes meeting Naruto's, one filled with disbelief and the other simply monotony. What did you just say? Sasuke asked, not sure if he had heard him right. He did not just call Sasuke Uchiha weak. I said you're pathetic, feeble, weak, Naruto repeated, gaining small gasps from around the room. He could feel a few of the girls glaring at him, but what did he care? Not like their opinions mattered. I'd be careful, newcomer. I can kick you from here to Tazuna. Sasuke growled. Explain why you think I actually care? Naruto replied, completely bored with the whole situation. I'm warning you now. I am at the top of the class. I could beat you down into the ground. The raven-haired teen seethed. Usually he didn't care what others said, but this kid, he acted like he knew he could beat him. He had called him weak. And that infuriated Sasuke to no end. Whatever. Naruto mocked, closing his eyes again. Sasuke had had enough. Okay, that does it. You, me outside. Now. He stated darkly, his eyes brimming with determination. Nah, I'll pass. He responded. Sasuke slammed his hands on the desk, causing small cracks to appear underneath his clenched fists. That wasn't an offer. That was a demand. Sasuke snarled, already turning to walk out the door. Naruto sighed. At least it would be more fun than just sitting here. Training field. The crowd around the sidelines, whispers rippling through the crowd of the upcoming battle. Sasuke stood on one end and Naruto on the other, his hands still in his pockets. Fight for real. Sasuke muttered, taking a stance. Naruto ed. I don't think your fangirls would like it if I killed you. Naruto answered simply. Sasuke growled. He was going down. Taking a deep breath, he raised his fingers to his mouth, preparing for one of his infamous techniques. Katan! Gakakyu no Jutsu, come at me. Give it your all. Sasuke growled, his stance poised and straight, perfect in every way. Naruto on the other hand just stood in silence, his hands still in his pockets. I don't think your fangirls would appreciate it if I killed you. The blonde answered smoothly, glancing at the barricade of girls boredly. Most of them wore a furious expression. They had had enough of this newcomer. He actually thought he could beat Sasuke. A few just looked on in interest. Who cared what happened to the Uchiha? They needed some excitement in this class, and the new kid was sure stirring it up a bit. You can take him, Sasuke! Ino cried, pushing herself into the front line. Her eyes flickered to Naruto's face, and she faltered in her step for half a second, but she quickly covered that mistake up as soon as it had appeared. Sakura stood beside her, her eyes wide. She couldn't feel a chakra sense from the blonde, not even a glimmer of power that every ninja held. It was odd for a shinobi not to have any chakra at all. They were always born with a flare of the blue aura. And yet, this teen didn't have a speck. He was going to get creamed. I will beat you, Sasuke assured, breathing steadily, preparing for the jutsu that would finish the fight before it began. Naruto scoffed. You couldn't beat me if I were dying on the floor. He replied simply, the confidence in his tone overwhelming, and completely believable. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, his brow furrowing. Time to end this waste of time. Katan! Gakakyu no Jutsu! Sasuke yelled, in as much air as possible, and then breathing out, a large stream of fire rocketing towards the blonde. Naruto didn't budge, not even an inch, as the flames engulfed his body, the burning inferno licking at the GR beneath his form, scorching a blackened circle in the field. The crowd's eyes widened. He hadn't even tried to move. Sasuke smirked. So much for his talk. But his smile disappeared as he felt a presence behind him. He whipped around, confronting the one that was angering him. How could you have dodged that? We all saw you. It hit. Sasuke growled, not one to be outdone. Naruto shrugged, kicking at the boredly. I merely sidestepped. He answered. Sasuke's eyes widened, shocked yet again. He had been surprised more times today than he had been since he started the academy. Why you could have dodged my greatest attack? Sasuke muttered, talking more to himself than the boy in front of him. Naruto frowned, his eyebrows furrowing. Greatest? Seriously? I was hoping you were, more. The prodigy Uchiha ought to be the best. Like your brother. Naruto said, striking Sasuke's weak point. Just hearing the mention of that man made the Uchiha incredibly mad, a new sense of power rising up. He roared, leaping at the blonde, only to grab nothing but air. Where'd you go, bastard? Sasuke growled under his breath. A hard jab from behind caused him to sprawl forward, almost losing his footing. Regaining control, he spun on his heel, still bent in half, and aiming a swipe at the bottom of Naruto's shins, attempting to knock him off balance. The Jinchuriki simply jumped in his place, avoiding the blow, and flipped backwards, landing 10 feet away from where Sasuke stood, panting. The Uchiha glared at the boy. He was making him look bad in front of his entire class. Making the Uchiha look weak. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, the knuckles turning white. Iruka took a step forward into the field, raising his hands in peace. Okay, very good Sasuke. Your jutsu is coming along great. Back to clevery one, he yelled, trying to break up the fight before someone really got hurt. Naruto nodded in agreement. You should listen to your sensei. Don't want to get yourself gravely injured before our graduation test tomorrow. Naruto added, smirking on the inside. He just loved messing with Master Itachi's younger brother. Quiet. I will see this fight through to the end. And I will be victorious. He snarled, flashing over to where Naruto stood in an instant. Performing a perfect roundhouse kick, he shot it at Naruto's head, but the blonde easily evaded the attack, slipping down and out of the grasp Sasuke was trying to get him in. Watching his opponent's moves, Sasuke forcefully pushed himself off the ground and came back around, this time going for Naruto's chest. But the newcomer danced away, his hands never leaving his pockets. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. That's it. The raven-haired boy ripped a kunai from his holster and spun it around on his pointed finger expertly, clutching it so that it was pointed toward the ground, in a maneuverable position. He ran at Naruto one last time, set on making this his last attack. Naruto rolled his eyes. As if a kunai was enough. For his last move, Naruto decided to play it up a notch, just for the audience. He closed his eyes. Sasuke was taken aback for a moment, but quickly dove back into his ninja thinking status. Ha, he's giving up. I expected more. Sasuke hollered, lashing out with his arm, the point headed straight for the boy's side. The class's eyes widened. Sasuke was going to kill him. Then, he was gone. Sasuke's blade met nothing but the air around him, again. Ino almost screamed when she saw Naruto appear right behind the Uchiha, who had absolutely no idea he was there. With a swift and sharp jolt to his back, Sasuke was sent flying, skidding across the field, uprooting grand dirt, and landed in a twisted heap in the upper right corner. Everyone held their breath as Naruto flashed over to Sasuke's unmoving body, bending down to where his face was buried in the ground. So did I, Naruto muttered in reply. Sasuke clenched his jaw in fury. He was going down. Naruto smirked inwardly at the boy's anger, and then calmly walked off the battlefield. A round of applause broke out amongst the boys while the Uchiha's fangirls just glared at the blonde's back, fire in their eyes. How dare he hurt Sasuke? The only girls that weren't in a funk over the emo boy were Ino, Hinata, Tenten and Sakura. All were in shock that the Sasuke Uchiha, #1 top ninja in the class, had just been taken down by someone that had just randomly appeared that afternoon, and with no records of training beforehand. In an instant, Naruto was surrounded by 3 of the class's boys, one of them being the brunette that had tried to prank him earlier. Man, you are awesome! Said the teen exclaimed, the puppy on his head barking in agreement. Yeah, you really showed Sasuke. The kid next to him added. He wore brown pants and a cream-colored shirt, in which a red symbol was imprinted. Over that, he wore a short-sleeved green jacket, also accompanied by a long white scarf, reaching down to his knees. His arms and legs were wrapped in white bandages, and he donned the standard ninja shoe. On his cheeks were thin, red swirls, and he had that baby kid of face, innocent and smiling. He deserved that beatdown. Acting all superior all the time. The last one said, watching the clouds roll by lazily. His brown hair was tied up in a high ponytail, spiked out crazily, looking like the top of a pineapple. He had black pants, and a netting shirt, covered by a light green short-sleeved jacket, ending at the top of his rib cage. He had 2 small, silver earrings hanging from his ears. He held out his hand, smiling slightly. The name's Shikamaru. And this is Chuji and Kiba, he said. Naruto glanced at each of the others in turn, and then stared warily at the hand offered to him. Slowly, he reached out to meet it, taking a loose grasp. Shikamaru smirked, Chuji and Kiba smiled behind him. So, we never caught your name, Kiba commented. Naruto sighed. Here we go. My name is of no importance, nor do you have a need to know it. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to go and train, Naruto replied coldly, shoving his way past the confused academy students and walking a short distance, disappearing in a flash. In the center of a field close to the edge of the village, Naruto was balanced on one hand, eyes closed. He breathed even and steady, focusing on being still and motionless, masking his chakra sense completely, of course. The art of patience had always been harder for the boy to learn than ninjutsu, but after years of Itachi's training and words of wisdom, Naruto had grown accustomed to being silent and tranquil, becoming one with the world around him. His peace was shattered when a shrill whining erupted from his mic, causing him to snap out of his immobile state, sending him sprawling to the ground. Muttering profanities, he peeled himself off the forest floor, raising a hand to answer the call. You ruined my focus, he said stubbornly, already knowing who it would be. There was a chuckle from the other end. Always training. How about making some friends? Itachi replied, testing the child's intellect. Naruto sighed inwardly. You told me to stay as distanced as I can. Don't talk to anyone unless spoken to and never reveal anything of value. Naruto answered robotically, staring at his feet. Itachi smiled. Good, very good. Now, how was your first day as a spy? The Uchiha questioned, moving on to business. Naruto shrugged, momentarily forgetting that they were on the intercom, not sitting next to each other. Fine, but quite boring most of the time. Class full of pranksters and know-it-alls. Oh, and fangirls. Things didn't kick up until the fight. The blonde explained, picking at a piece of grass. Itachi's end was silent for a few minutes, and Naruto began to think they had lost connection. Master Itachi? He called, making a move to adjust the station. Fight? His teacher questioned hesitantly, as if afraid of the answer. Yeah. Your little brother Sasuke. He's a pain in the you-know. Acting so superior. Naruto rambled. The dark-haired teen gasped, his eyes widening. You meet Sasuke? He said again, whispering. Yes. The 12-year-old replied. Itachi released the breath he didn't know he was holding, his thoughts running wild. Listen to me, Naruto, and listen well. I don't want you to get close to Sasuke at all. He could ruin the entire plan, and then you'll be caught, along with the rest of us. Do you understand? He commanded quickly. Naruto sat in shock for a few seconds, but shook himself out of that daze quickly. Okay, course, Master Itachi. He muttered in reply, still confused as to why his sensei would react like that. I mean, I was just his little brother, who had failed to succeed him in the Uchiha path as of yet. Good. Now, I must take my leave of you. The organization has a meeting tonight, and I am still one country away. Stay in contact, keep your lines open. I will be checking on your progress soon, and remember, stay secluded. Itachi explained, seeming cheery again. And then he was gone, the line buzzing with static. Naruto sighed and switched the device off, not really wanting to return to training. So, he easily jumped into a walk, strolling towards his old apartment. The sun was setting behind the Hokage's monument now, and the village people were beginning to retreat to their homes, the teens and drinkers coming out to play. Along the path, he could feel the hot glares on his back, the killing intent coming from almost every one of those people. During his training, he had built up an immunity to the states and hawks of people, the fact being that they had passed through so many towns while traveling. But those looks had been of interest, or curiosity. He hadn't felt the hated glares of the villagers for so long, and it still got to him. Naruto sighed, his cerulean eyes letting a little sadness leak past their barricade of boredom. 8 years later, and still nothing has changed. The glares, and the empty feeling. My time will shine, the plan will follow through, and I will become a legacy, someone the villagers see in a new light. But the question now is, will I be able to bear it until then? The Academy CL buzzed with excitement and nervousness, everyone talking in small groups, giving encouragement and making bets as to who was going to do better. Yes, it was the day of the graduation test, and the room was full of life, every student practically on the edge of their seats in anticipation for the upcoming tests, and hopefully, graduation parties. But the most concentrated subject was one of the class's most favorite pastime discussions. Did you hear about his latest adventure? Ino whispered to her group of friends, which consisted of Sakura, Hinata, and Tenten. Yeah, my mom told me that she had heard the captain talking about it. Amazing, isn't it? Tenten answered, smiling. The three girls nodded in agreement. They were talking about none other than the hero that had spread across the nations in a matter of years, stretching from simply stopping burglars moving all the way up to taking down armies single-handedly. He went by the name of Firefox, the fact being that he knew so many fire jutsu above all others. When word of this hero first came about, a great fraction of the CL believed that it was Sasuke, due to the fact that he was exceedingly excellent at fire-type attacks, and that he disappeared before the village's forces of ninja arrived. Not a trace of him left. But that assumption was quickly killed when more news of the unknown ninja's deeds leaked around the nations. He had been traveling all over the countries, starting in the Sea Country and moving into the lower regions of the Fire Country. He had recently been reported in a major trading town down south, called Kazuaki Port. He had stopped the kidnapping of the Lord's daughter, who happened to turn out to be one of their trading partners. The man had planned to hold the girl for a grand ransom, causing the Lord to become so poor, the trading facility would need to be shut down, leaving all the business for his port. Firefox was quickly becoming a legacy around the world. It really makes you wonder who they really are. Hinata stuttered, playing with her fingers while she spoke. Yeah, and why is he doing it? Risking his life for people he doesn't know? Talk about a true hero. Ino replied, getting a dreamy gleam in her eyes. The boys behind them rolled their eyes. They could be such girls. If you asked me, he's probably in it for fame, or the money. Kiba commented, jumping into their conversation. Kiba! He's obviously a caring, merciful, and generous person. Ino exclaimed, shooting to defend the hero. Kiba scoffed, as if he wants the high payment that goes with each deed. I mean, take a look at the facts. Lords, kages, wealthy landowners, and little old ladies, and poor people, and children, and even beggars. Sakura interrupted, smirking smugly. Kiba cut off, his expression turning into one of deep thought. Whatever. I still think it's all about the money. He muttered, leaning back into his chair. If he really wanted the riches Kiba, he would have revealed his presence by now. Hinata pointed out. The three other girls stared at the brunette in victory, while he searched for a reason to diss the ninja in question. Finding none, his wise smile dipped into a defeated frown. The four girls laughed. Point 1. Sakura said, high fives breaking out amongst the group. Kiba crossed his arms firmly across his chest, pouting as if he were 5 again. At that moment, Iruka walked into the room, causing all of the chattering students to scramble to their seats, falling over one another. Following Chunnin was the leader of the village, the Sandaime Hokage. His wrinkled face lifted up into a gentle smile when he saw all the gawking faces. Iruka turned to face the class, the attendance board clutched in his hands. Today is the day of the final exam, where your abilities will be tested, to determine if you are ready to move on to Genin. Me, and the Hokage will be scoring your assessment, and if you pass, you will pick up your forehead protector at the desk. Now, first up will be Aburame Shino, Iruka explained, calling out the first name on the clipboard. A kid in the back stood up and began the descent to the floor, avoiding any eye contact from anybody else. His outfit was simple, black pants, a long light green jacket that covered half of his face and black sunglasses, hiding his eyes. In a couple words, he was creepy and mysterious. But nothing more than that, seeing he had never said much. No one really knew much about him. The three disappeared into a room in the front, and as soon as the door closed, the talking continued, students scattering across the room to return to their groups. Ino, Sakura, Hinata, and Tenten all huddled up, discussing the latest fashion trends. Behind them, Kiba, Chuji, and Shikamaru sat relaxed, discussing their thoughts on video games and random ideas that came to mind. Across the room was the rest of the class, all gathering together to play a game of Genijai, a card match they had apparently created in the study time Iruka always gave them at the end of the day. And lastly, the lone Uchiha sat in the front corner, furthest away from all the commotion. He had his hands folded, and his chin rested on top of them, staring into space, his favorite pastime position. The only one missing was the new kid, and every few minutes, someone's eyes would flash to the door, scoping to see if the newest topic of interest was arriving. About 5 minutes after they had left, they were back again, Shino wearing a shiny, Konoha headband. A few of the kids oohed and ahed, whispering to their friends about how that would be them next, strolling out of that room victoriously, and sporting a ninja headband, a kimchi chuji. Iruka hollered, waiting for the boy to rise. The teen gulped nervously, clutching the bag of chips in his hands rather hardly, causing some of them to reduce to nothing but dust. His friends gave him an encouraging pat on the back, murmuring good luck and you can do it. Slowly, he made his way down the steps and into the room, Iruka following close behind. A creaking from the door turned everyone's attention away from their conversations and to the door. And in walked the boy everyone had been so anxious to see, still donning that I really don't want to be here expression. Naruto walked calmly into the room, dropping into a chair in the first row, a good length away from the rest of the clans and an even greater length away from Sasuke. Said raven-haired boy narrowed his eyes and turned away from him, glaring at the wall. Naruto smirked. Hormones raging today, are they? Is that why you're acting like such an over-emotional girl? Naruto chuckled, pushing the boy's buttons for the second time in less than 24 hours. Sasuke's eye twitched, his scowl deepening. He didn't bother to face the newcomer, but he couldn't take that, and Uchiha wouldn't be beaten. You should watch what you say. I'll beat you down into the ground faster than you can say another comeback. Sasuke growled. Naruto laughed on the inside, but remained calm and composed on the outside. Really? Well, as I do recall, you aren't that much of a threat. Naruto answered, tilting back in his chair, closing his eyes peacefully. Sasuke growled under his breath. I've improved, he promised darkly. Naruto's mouth lifted up in a tiny smile at that. No one could progress enough to beat me in only a day. Especially not you, Naruto replied. Sasuke whipped around, ready to give the blonde the fight of his life. But at that moment, Iruka and Chuji emerged, the triumphant boy wearing a headband proudly upon his head. His friends burst out into a round of applause, smiling congratulations and admiration. Iruka's eyes flashed over to the trembling Uchiha, and followed his glare to Sasuke's target. So glad you could join us, nah, Iruka started, but once noticing the warning glare he was receiving from the blonde, he knew that the boy did not want his name spoken aloud. Newcomer, Iruka finished, covering his mistake. A little late though, as the rest of the Chad caught his misstep, and was watching the boy with thought, as though trying to come up with a name for him. Rhea Bulistoria, a dark-haired brunette bounced down the stairs, a confident smile stretched across her face. As soon as Iruka's pineapple-like hair vanished from sight, 7 Academy students surrounded him. So, your name starts with an A, huh? Kiba inspected, gaining a group eye roll from the rest of the group. I think you mean Na. Sakura corrected. Naruto sighed. Again? This is really beginning to grow annoying. Yes, it begins with Na. But that's all you're going to get, because I'm not going to tell you. Naruto answered harshly. PSH, who said we wanted you to tell us? We're gonna find out for ourselves. Kiba replied, posing in a thinking position. Naruto scoffed. Whatever. He answered, tilting back in his chair again, his long blonde hair shadowing his eyes. Harino Sakura. Iruka called, Rhea waltzing out proudly, the infamous protector shimmering on her upper arm. Sakura bounced up from her position on the floor and walked into the room, chewing nervously on her bottom lip. Let's see. Start with N, Kiba pondered, his brow furrowing in thought. Nawaki? Shikamaru threw out. Naruto just scoffed, and closed his eyes. Maybe he could catch some ZZs while the genin wasted their time in an effort to guess the name they would never get. The blonde must have actually passed out too, because the next thing he knew was the feeling of the burning gaze of a certain Uchiha as he walked past him, heading into the testing room. He glanced around, shocked that he had been asleep for only a few minutes, when really it had felt like hours. All around him, the newly graduated students were still on the subject, their new headbands gleaming, ranging from their foreheads, their waists, their necks, or arms. Suddenly, at that moment, Naruto had an urge to wear one of those same protectors, to be marked as one of Konoha's ninja. But the boy quickly shook away that thought. Don't get attached, don't get attached. Don't even think about it, Yamanaka Ino. Iruka called, making it down to the last few on the list. Sasuke strode out of the exam room, his charcoal eyes shining with my victory. Strapped to his forehead was the Konoha headband that everyone here was striving for. As Ino passed the dark boy, she blushed slightly, but less than she usually would. A majority of the claws taken aback. Wow. She usually tackles him if he gets in a quarter-mile area. Kiba commented, smiling mischievously. Ino whirled around and stuck her tongue out childishly before disappearing inside the room. Once the blonde-haired girl vanished, the group returned their attention to the other blonde sitting at the table, who met their gaze, completely clueless. Now, we've been guessing for about 20 minutes now, and we still haven't figured it out. Could you just tell us now? Kiba whined, rubbing his head as if he had been in intense thinking for more than mere minutes. Naruto rolled his eyes. They could be so pathetic. I'll tell you one more time. There is no way in this lifetime that you could ever make me tell you my Naruto. Iruka shouted, calling off the last name on the board, which had been scrawled on quickly that morning. But the second those words left his mouth, he regretted it. Naruto shot him with a glare so deadly it would have burned him to a crisp on the spot, and Naruto was trying really hard too. The genin around him smiled in victory, their eyes dancing brightly. So, your name is Naruto, huh? Kiba said, barely containing a laugh. Naruto edged and stood up, walking over to where Iruka stood waiting. As he passed, he whispered one word to the Chunin. Nice. He muttered, ignoring the high fives and words of congratulations from the genin behind him. Testing room. Naruto stood in the center of the room, waiting for instruction. Iruka sat down heavily in the chair next to the Hokage, sighing before speaking. You may begin. Make 3 able-bodied and working clones and you pass. Iruka explained, watching the boy with interested eyes. Naruto chuckled slightly. 3? I know Itachi said they were weak, but really, this is bad. Naruto formed a seal, an open hand over a fist. In an instant, 10 clones formed from the boy, spreading to either side, each one perfect. Iruka smiled. He hadn't expected less. Naruto smirked as well. I wish Itachi hadn't limited me. It's like being 7 all over again. Very good, Naruto. You exceeded the limit with flying colors. He commented, carefully picking a leaf headband off the table. Holding it out to the blonde, he smiled. Welcome to the leaf, genin Naruto. The night was cool, the only escape from the heat that radiates down in the July days. There was a calm wind from the north, causing trees to dance in the darkness, the leaves singing their own little tune. Walking down a barely visible path was the newly graduated genin Naruto, staring silently at his feet. The Konoha headband was tied firmly to his forehead, shining in the night, symbolizing that he was a ninja of the leaf. Or so they thought. Flashback. Earlier that morning, Naruto grabbed the forehead protector thankfully, smiling slightly at the Hokage and Iruka. He raised it to his head, tying it securely. He turned, heading towards the door and his new genin classmates. When he stepped out, the sound of chairs grinding against the wooden floors was all that was heard as everyone shifted from their conversational positions, searching for a leaf headband. Their eyes immediately landed on the shiny metal band, and once they did, smiles broke out amongst the crowd. The group in the front, consisting of Kiba and the others, burst into a round of applause. When Naruto sat back down in his chair, he was greeted with words of congratulation and comments, and a few claps on the back. Sasuke just glared at the merry group, his charcoal eyes gleaming red with anger. Iruka strode out of the exam room, followed shortly by the Hokage. The old man walked to the front of the room, his face lifting up into a smile, the wrinkles on his face folding easily from the years of wear. Congratulations to you all for passing the exam. You are now all genin of the leaf, proud wearers of the shinobi symbol. The will of fire has sparked, and will hopefully burn brightly within you for many years to come, until your last breath for some. Your village is depending on you, looking up to you for guidance and protection. Don't let them down. Become strong in the shinobi path. I can see that there is great courage and skill in this group, something I haven't seen in a long time. Be faithful, be willing, and good luck to you all, the Hokage spoke, his words brimming with emotion and confidence. After his little speech, he turned and walked out of the door, leaving the clan Irika's hands once again for the last time. Tomorrow, you will be assigned to your teams and meet your sensei. Be here at 8 o'clock sharp, and if you're not, it's back to the academy. The Chunin explained. Just as the last of the information left his mouth, the bell's shrill whine blew, calling out the end of the day. The students raced from the desks, tripping over one another, wanting to be the first out the door. Irika sighed. New ninja, still the same immature children they were 10 minutes ago. It had been foolish to actually believe that one headband would change them all at once. Irika smiled softly. Soon they'll realize just how vigorous a shinobi's life really is, and when that day comes, hopefully they'll be ready. End flashback. Naruto sighed, running his hand over the engraving on the cool metal. He was now officially part of the village, mixed in the sea of genin that would become his teammates in the next 24 hours. And for the next few months, Naruto would wait, anticipating Itachi's plan. The blonde walked into a rather large clearing, a skylight in the trees, showing the twinkling stars above. Being so far from the village, the glow of lamps and street lights didn't fade the wonders of the universe out. The boy smirked a little, a warm feeling filling throughout his body. He had always loved stargazing, ever since he started his journey with Master Itachi. Being ninja on the run, they rarely ever slept in a building. Most of the time they just pulled off the road and rested in trees, hidden from passers-by by the branches of the higher area. Naruto's infrequent moment of happiness was wiped away into curiosity when he heard a fanatical laughter coming from behind the shed. He walked silently over, for once his own thoughts taking over his natural instinct to walk away. He jumped noiselessly onto the roof, clambering over until he could see the object of his wonder. Down below, a shinobi was sitting in a patch of long grass, leaning against the wooden building. He was dressed in the standard Chunin uniform, his green jacket blending with the lawn around him. His white hair was the only flaw with his disguise, gleaming white like a light amongst all the dark color of the forest. Resting at his side was a large scroll, only a few inches smaller than the blonde himself. It was unraveled, and the man was studying the words that were splashed upon it. Once I learn these jutsu, the village will be mine. The shinobi muttered to himself, sounding as if he had gone partially insane. Naruto's eyes narrowed and his gaze flickered to the forehead protector on his head, the leaf symbol glowing brightly. Suddenly, the teen was filled with an emotion he hadn't felt in a long while. He felt determined, like he needed to stop the shinobi before him from committing the dastardly deed he was planning. Naruto couldn't understand. Why would he care for a village that hated him, despised him, before they even gave him a chance? Why did he feel like he wanted to stop the man, instead of standing by with a bowl of popcorn and watching first-handed as the village burned to the ground? The blonde shook himself out of his thoughts, coming to a conclusion. He simply wanted to stop him because if he took down the leaf, then Master Itachi's plans and dreams would be lost, be nothing. Naruto sighed. Oh well. He coiled edgily, springing down from the roof without difficulty, landing with a soft thud in front of the traitorous shinobi. The man's eyes flashed up to his, full of confusion and shock. He certainly hadn't been expecting a visitor. Naruto stood up to full height, crossing his arms over his chest stiffly. I don't believe that belongs to you, Naruto said darkly, his cerulean eyes dully watching the man's reaction. The white-haired ninja just sat there in a daze, gawking, as he tried to grasp the idea that he had been caught. But soon enough, the man was forced out of his daze when Naruto took a step forward, his eyes on the scroll. The shinobi snatched the parchment away, rolling it back up with a flick of a wrist. It's mine now, he snarled, clutching it to his chest protectively. Naruto rolled his eyes, because a pair of scrawny arms could stop him from getting what he wanted. You're messing with the wrong guy, Naruto muttered, stepping towards him again. The man followed, stepping backwards in retreat, as if a lowly genin like you could take me, a chunin of the leaf, down. I am Mizuki, and I am great. The man laughed. Naruto scoffed. You don't deserve to wear that symbol. The blonde continued, taking another step forward. He raised his head, boring his gaze into the man's eyes, his expression neutral. The ninja stumbled backwards. The feel of the boy's gaze made him feel uneasy, even if it was only a newly graduated genin. How could a child so young have such an intense sentiment of power radiating from him? Mizuki's eyes gave the boy a once-over, measuring him up if he decided to attack. His stare paused though when he got to the boy's face. His brow furrowed as he studied the whisker-like marks on his cheeks. They seemed oddly familiar. Realization hit, and his eyes went wide. A million different emotions ran through his eyes in a wave: fear, misunderstanding, confusion, suspicion, doubt, confirmation, anger, and hatred. His teeth clenched, and he smiled unexpectedly. You don't deserve the headband either. You don't even deserve the right to be walking amongst mankind. The name ninja is wasted on you. You aren't anywhere close to being a hero or a helper, he shouted, pointing his finger accusingly at the 12-year-old boy. Naruto shrugged. Whoever said I was a hero or a helper? He replied simply. Mizuki chuckled. You're right. Those are both human, aren't they? No, you fit different standards. You are a demon spawn, the lowest subject of life on this earth. You don't justify walking upon the earth, and you most certainly aren't worthy of a life. You were supposed to be killed off years ago, demon. He ranted, making it clear what he was talking about. I wonder how you even survived. I bet you end the life of people until you meet your hunger for death, he added. Naruto scoffed. I'm not a vampire, the blonde said. The man laughed. Of course you aren't. You're worse than a vampire, or 1,000 enemy ninja marching from the horizon. You are the nine-tailed fox, the shinobi announced grandly, watching the teen's expression carefully. But to his shock, he just stood there, staring at him with the same dull expression he had been for the past few minutes. Tell me something I don't know. Mizuki's expression dissolved into confusion, fading away from the pure triumph it was only seconds ago. You knew? Then that should make you even more furious, more compelled to kill that thing. But why would you do that? You'd only be killing yourself, and besides, he is your only ally, Mizuki exclaimed, the raging gleam returning. Naruto's fists clenched. This was always the toughest of subjects with him. It made his blood boil when he heard naive people addressing him as the demon itself, as if he were really the murderous killing machine, instead of only being its container. I'm blown away that you would even think of showing your face around here. I mean, returning to the place where everyone wants you dead, thinking that they would accept you for you? The idea is insanity. Naruto could feel the anger and rage bubbling up from the deepest pit of his stomach, the absolute killing intent becoming his own ideals and priorities. To see the man cold and lifeless was his goal now. The blonde had felt this only a few times in his life, twice when he was training with Itachi. His master had commanded him to seal away those feelings. They would only lead to his downfall in a battle. He explained that it was only his hatred toward the villagers coming back to haunt him, and his best way around it was to force it down and ignore, and to never use it. So Naruto did just this. He closed his eyes in concentration, centering his focus on the spot where he could feel the intent radiating from the most. He pushed against it, feeling the strong resistance straining his muscles. After a few seconds without a budget, the force began to move slowly, ever so slowly, back into the darkness, where it would hide, waiting for another chance to be released. He returned to reality, his breath coming short. He always felt out of breath when he did this, like it had cost him his entire store of stamina. Mizuki was staring at him in bewilderment, not knowing what he was going to do. Naruto inhaled deeply, and calmly said, "Just give me the scroll, and I'll forget this ever happened." But Mizuki wouldn't have it. He tied to his back with an awaiting string, his sneer promising a fight. Never. He chuckled in return, his sanity starting to come into question. Naruto sighed. Well, there was no way around it now. The blonde crouched, and then vanished into thin air, seeming as if he'd never been there in the first place. Mizuki searched wildly around the clearing, looking for his seemingly invisible opponent. A blow from the back knocked the air out of his lungs and caused him to stumble forward. He whipped around, ready to counter with a blow of his own. But to his surprise, Naruto had already disappeared, on the move again. The blonde flashed into sight, his roundhouse kick aimed straight for the right side of Mizuki's face. It hit its mark, sending the Chunin to the ground. Naruto landed soundlessly in front of the fallen man, his expression unreadable. Sheesh, if the Chunin are this bad, then I'd hate to see the rest of the Genin class's abilities. The white-haired shinobi peeled himself off the ground, and while Naruto was thinking, he lashed out with a blind blow, heading for the center of Naruto's stomach. He danced to the left, avoiding the blow easily, making the man fall forward. He quickly regained his stature and wheeled around on his heel, sweeping Naruto's knee. The blonde started to fall backwards, a perfectly undefended position for an attack, but fast as light, he was back springing onto his feet again, his hands up and ready. His eyes flickered around the battlefield, planning his attacks and defenses, his dodges and strikes. He was drawn instantly to the sight of the treetops. They were outlined by a soft glow of yellow, signaling daylight. It's morning already? By the looking of the shadows that were beginning to emerge, it was still rather early. The academy probably wasn't even open yet. Still, he wanted to get there soon. The layout of the academy was only a fractional part of Itachi's plan. Better finish this fast. Naruto dodged another punch from Mizuki's end and answered with one of his own, enhanced with his chakra, making the strike 10 times as hard as his normal hits are. It hit dead center, right on Mizuki's left temple. The force from the blow was bone-shaking and made Mizuki fall to the ground in a daze. He shook his head furiously, trying to return his vision. I will beat you! I am the great Mizuki! He shouted, his eyelids drooping with unconsciousness. Well, might as well speed this process up. Yeah, great, unbeatable, blah blah. Naruto muttered, forcefully injecting a small shot of his chakra into one of the man's pressure points. His eyes went wide and in a matter of seconds, the shinobi was out cold. Naruto slung the man over his shoulder, untying the scroll from his back. Now to make my returns, take out the trash, and then it's off to school. He murmured, hopping onto the nearest branch and heading off in the direction of the Hokage's tower. Later that morning, the claws buzzing with life, every genin excited for their first day as official Leaf Ninja. All but 3 people were involved in the happiness. Sasuke, who was just staring at the wall, Shino, who was inspecting a bug that had flown into the class, and Naruto, who was sound asleep in his chair. Iruka walked into the room, the door closing heavily behind him, jarring the blonde out of his slumber. Congratulations. You are on the last leg of your academy career, ready to move on into the world of the shinobi. Today, you will be assigned to your sensei, who will give instruction from then on how they see fit. So pay attention and listen up, Iruka said, looking each student in the eye as he spoke. When he was absolutely sure that everyone was moderately tuned in, he raised his clipboard and began to read out names and teams. Team 1 will be. 6 teams later, Team 7 will be Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke smirked slightly, his gaze turning in Naruto's direction for a split second. Sakura Haruno. Sakura smiled. The same team as Sasuke. Take that, Ino. And Naruto. Naruto smiled while Sasuke frowned. Share a squad with him. Oh boy, this could get interesting. I wonder if Sasuke frowned any deeper if his face would break. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Now Team 8 will be Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. Your sensei will be Yahi Kurinai. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Chuji Akimichi, and Shikamaru Nara. Your instructor will be Asuma Sarutobi. The buzzed excited as new team members greeted one another, and friends gave words of congratulations and encouragement. Sasuke glared at Naruto, Sakura gawked at Sasuke, and Naruto was trying to ignore them all. He wanted nothing more than to blow this off and sleep or train. Anything was better than this. Your sensei will be here shortly and from then on out, they will instruct you on what to do, Iruka explained. A few hours later, Iruka's academy classroom was empty, all of their students with their new teams. Well, all except for 3 of them. 2 hours. The man is 2 hours late, Naruto stated. Even he was beginning to get annoyed at how long it was taking this guy to get here. Talk about a great first impression, Sakura muttered in addition. She was laying on her back on the floor, watching the ceiling in complete and utter boredom. Sasuke was doing the same thing he did every day, and only gave them a HN in response. I say we just bail. Let him come looking for us, Naruto suggested. Sakura glanced at him as he watched the clock, his eyes following the second hand like it was his job. That wouldn't be a very good first notion on our part, Sakura commented. Naruto only shrugged. The guy can think whatever the hell he wants to. I don't really care. What I do care about is that we have been sitting here alone for about an hour and a half. This time could have been used to train, or sleep, or something much more interesting than this. The blonde ranted, saying the most words he's uttered since the second he got there. Well, we could take the time to get to know each other better, you know, Bond? Sakura offered. Both Sasuke and Naruto stared blankly at her, and the next few seconds passed by in silence. Never mind. She sighed, realizing that she wasn't going to get much enthusiasm from these two. 1 hour later. That's it, I'm so gone, Naruto muttered as he rose from his chair, heading over to the window. But before he could reach the opening, in a burst of smoke, a man was standing in front of him. And where do you think you're going? He asked, his only visible eye narrowing. Naruto glanced up, giving him a once-over. Leaving, he answered simply. Not if I have a say about it. The man replied without hesitation, his gaze steady. Naruto raised an eyebrow, questioning him. But soon enough, he shrugged and walked back over to where the other two were waiting. Now, I am Kakashi Hatake, your sensei. I didn't know we were gonna be taught by Cyclops. They certainly left that out of their description, Naruto commented quietly, gaining a giggle from Sakura. Kakashi sighed. Oh great, a comedian. Look, I'm about as thrilled to be here as you guys, so let's make today quick and painless. Okay, Kakashi said, looking at the three in turn. After a while with no response, he sighed. Just meet me on the roof, he muttered, vanishing in a puff of smoke. At first, they only sat there, staring at the spot where he once stood. Well, I guess we better head up there, Sakura said, pulling herself off the ground. Naruto and Sasuke groaned and reluctantly stood from their chairs and followed their pink-haired teammate to the stairs that would take them to the roof. The roof. Kakashi sat on a pole, overlooking the front entrance to the academy a good 3 stories down. He was reading a small orange book and giggling occasionally as he waited for his students. What the hell are you reading? A voice interrupted him, causing the masked jounin to jump. Naruto was looking over his shoulder, scanning the lines of writing on the pages. Kakashi snapped the book shut and tucked it in his vest pocket. Wow, you must be a really-ish jounin if you hadn't sensed him coming, Naruto commented, sitting on a cement step as the other two joined him. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. He masked his chakra so well that I couldn't sense him coming. Most genin don't know how to do that. Well, I have a routine to follow, so let's try and make it through this first train wreck out of the many to come, okay? Alright, tell me your name, hobbies, likes, dislikes, and dreams. Starting with you, he said, pointing to Sakura. My name's Sakura Haruno. My hobbies are gardening and being with my friends. I like to study medical journals, and my dislikes would be bugging me constantly about. Well, yeah. My dream is to become a great medical ninja, seeing as I'm not that great at ninjutsu, the girl said, blushing when she came about her dislikes. Kakashi rolled his eyes inwardly, along with the other male members of the team. Great, a fangirl. You're next, emo boy, Kakashi said, pointing at Sasuke. My name's Sasuke Uchiha. My only love is training. My dislikes are most of everything else. I don't have a hobby. And my dream is to kill off the man who murdered my family, he replied in a monotone voice. An Avenger. That could raise some issues in the future. Since I'm a nice guy, I'm going to save you the trouble. My name's Naruto. I don't have a hobby, a like or a dislike, and my dreams are of none of your concern, Naruto said simply. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at his response. Well, don't they make an interesting group? The lovesick fangirl, the emo Avenger, and the mystery. The name's Kakashi, as you know. I don't have a hobby, a couple likes, a few dislikes, and a dream that you don't need to know, Kakashi explained. Isn't that porno book considered a hobby? Naruto commented, gaining a snicker from Sakura and even a small smirk from Sasuke. Shut up, kid, Kakashi replied. Alright, now that introductions are out of the way, let me explain what you'll be doing tomorrow. You may think that you're all ninja, being bad everywhere you go with that forehead protector, but you're not. You haven't officially passed the genin exams just yet, Kakashi started out. This was his favorite part of the test. His team only stared on in reply, confusion being the only emotion in their eyes. Tomorrow morning you will be put through a test, where the chances of you failing are 66. I want you to be at training field number 9 at 6 a.m. sharp, and oh, a word of advice, don't eat breakfast. Why not? Naruto asked. You'll puke. Kakashi answered candidly, poofing away in his cloud of smoke. Well, at least it's to the point. Sakura sighed. So far, her team was showing signs of quiet, problematic levels, and now she had to worry about this test tomorrow. I'm off to train, so I'll see you guys at 7. Naruto said. He told us 6. Sasuke stated. Look, I don't expect him to be there until around then, so take my advice, wait until then, Naruto replied before jumping off the roof of the academy and disappearing in mid-fall. With only one look, Sasuke and Sakura went their separate ways, preparing for the challenge ahead of them. Kakashi appeared in the Hokage's office, in front of the old man's desk, book in hand. Sarutobi glanced up from his word, the usually mounting stack only a few reports. Yes, Kakashi, was it? He questioned, dropping the pen to the desk. Kakashi bowed in respect before looking the man seriously in the eyes. It's about my new team, sir, or rather, a certain member of my team. Kakashi started, Sarutobi already knowing exactly who he was talking about. You mean Naruto? He said. Kakashi nodded. Now, I haven't seen his skills as of yet, but while I was on the roof, distracted, he managed to sneak up on me and take me by surprise. The Jounin explained. Sarutobi's eyes narrowed in confusion. I've never heard of a genin able to master their chakra since the day after they graduate from the academy. The Hokage commented, his brow furrowing in thought. Kakashi nodded in agreement. I think he must have had training before he returned to the village, and obviously someone with some skill. No ordinary rogue could have taught him how to hide it so well that even a trained Jounin couldn't detect it. Kakashi went on. Sarutobi nodded. Yes, this is astounding, and frightening. If he did have training, it was from someone outside these walls. It could have just been all those years in the wild. It would be a necessity to learn to remain undetected by all the enemy ninja he must have been surrounded by daily. The Hokage responded, searching for an answer to this interesting case. Of course. There are all kinds of possibilities. But he just seems too powerful for a kid. I'll be keeping a special eye on him during the bell test tomorrow. Kakashi said. Sarutobi nodded. Good idea. We can't jump to conclusions this early in the matter, but we do need to know how far exactly his skills go. We must keep an eye on Naruto from now on. Sasuke and Sakura groaned in unison. The pair had been standing there for an hour now and still no Kakashi. Hunger had washed over them about 40 minutes ago, and right now, the leaves on the trees were starting to look good. Suddenly, a concentrated wind picked up in the center of the field. Both genin glanced up. Had their sensei finally come? But when the whirling leaves cleared, it was Naruto that stood there, 2 breakfast bagels in hand. You're an hour late, dope. Sasuke muttered. Naruto shook his finger in a scolding way. Now, is the way to talk to someone who brought you breakfast? He said sarcastically. We're not supposed to eat, remember? Sasuke shot. Naruto shrugged. He also told me to be here at 6, and yet here I am at 7. He said, handing them each a bagel. Aren't I just a little delinquent today? Sakura and Sasuke exchanged a glance and with a shrug, ate the bagel Naruto had brought them. Said Blonde hopped up into a low tree branch, leaning against the trunk and closing his eyes. Sasuke glanced up at him and sighed. I still don't like you, he commented, though the retort didn't sound 100 like it usually did. Naruto smirked. Right back at ya, he replied, falling into a sleep instantly. Sakura watched him curiously. How does he do that? She wondered. But before she could think any farther, a burst of smoke turned their attention away from the snoozing blonde. Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I had to help a little old lady across the street, Kakashi said, his mask crinkling with a smile. Bullshit. Naruto muttered from his position in the tree. Kakashi glanced up at the boy, his eye narrowing. Yes, well, today is your final test and your final chance to actually become true genin and shinobi of the leaf. As you already know, the rate of passing is very low, And with me as your opponent, it lowers those statistics to a minimum," Kakashi explained. Naruto's eyes opened slightly at his last sentence. "Opponent?" he questioned. Kakashi nodded. He reached into his star pouch and produced 2 small, tinkling bells. "Your objective is to get these bells away from me before noon. And once you get them, only then will you get lunch," he said. "But there are 2 bells and 3 of us, meaning that one of us goes hungry?" Sakura said. Kakashi smirked. She was obviously the brains of the trio. Worse, the third one without a bell goes hungry and gets tied to the post until I see fit to release them. "Now, on your mark, get set, go!" Kakashi vanished into the woods in a streak of blue and green. Naruto sighed and pushed himself off the tree limb, expertly flipping to the ground. "So, any ideas?" Sakura asked. Sasuke nodded. "Yeah, I go and get one of those bells for myself and you 2 kill each other for the remaining one," he stated darkly, and jumped away after his sensei, leaving Naruto and Sakura alone. "And I suppose you want to do the same, right?" Sakura guessed, barely glancing at the blonde. "Nah. I'm gonna help you get your bell," he said, walking off into the woods, leaving a shocked girl behind. Shaking herself out of her daze, she scrambled after him. "What about you?" she wondered, watching him closely. Naruto shrugged. "I don't want it," he answered simply. "But you'll get tied up to the post," Sakura reminded him. Naruto glanced at her, his eyes holding question. "And?" he said, waiting as if she had more to say. "Being tied to a post isn't that big a deal in my eyes. Not after the things I've seen, the things I've done," Sakura smiled softly. "So maybe he does have a heart." Somewhere in the woods, Sasuke and Kakashi stood in a clearing, each facing each other from their opposite sides. "So, the Avenger comes to face me alone? Are you sure that's a good decision?" Kakashi said, flipping a page in his book. Sasuke gritted his teeth in frustration. "I can beat you and get that bell without their help, no problem," the boy growled, taking a stance. Kakashi smirked, putting the book in his vest pocket. "I'd love a little exercise, but I do believe those teammates of yours are approaching from the north. And something tells me that they'll be a little more interesting than you," he said. Sasuke roared in defiance and dashed toward the jounin, reaching for a bell. But just as his fingers brushed the metal, the ninja was gone, leaving the raven-haired teen to stumble to the ground, smashing his fist into the dirt. "I don't think so," he muttered, vanishing in a flash, right behind his fleeing teacher. "Naruto and Sakura, do you think that strategy will be enough against him? I mean, Kakashi is one of the best jounin we've had in years," Sakura said, running the idea through her mind again. Naruto nodded. "Trust me, it'll work," Naruto confirmed. Suddenly, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks, his cerulean eyes flickering around the trees. Sakura halted next to him, glancing around as well. "Naruto, what is it?" Then, faster than her eye could see, Naruto whipped around and caught a punch directed at his head, grasping the hand tightly. "Are you following me? 'Cause you know, that's called stalking," Naruto said, his fingers tightening around Kakashi's fist. The man smirked. "Search and destroy is part of my job as jounin," he replied before flipping out of the boy's hold. He landed almost silently a few yards away, a kunai in hand. Sakura glanced at the blonde and with a brisk nod she formed a simple genjutsu seal. In an instant, Kakashi was surrounded by about 9 blonde shinobi, all of them rushing in on the offense. Kakashi scoffed. "As if this could throw me off," he muttered, raising his hands and making a release seal. "Release!" he yelled, but to his surprise, nothing shifted in his vision, and the multitude of Narutos barraged him, sending him into the air. Each delivered a strong kick to the jounin's back, forcing him higher into the air, rising above the treetops. Just when Kakashi thought they were through pummeling his body, the real teen springboarded off another and launched himself above Kakashi, smiling smugly. Then, with a push from behind, Naruto flew through the air, his feet extended and aimed straight at Kakashi's chest. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. They may have gotten him with the fake genjutsu attack, but he wasn't one to be outdone. His hands flew through a string of seals, and with a clap of his hands, released a wave of hurtling air, racing toward the blonde. "Futon!" De Tapa? He cried. Just as it looked like the attack was going to hit dead center, Naruto lashed out and grabbed the top of a pine tree, whisking himself out of the way as the great wind flew by harmlessly, knocking a flock of birds out of the air instead. Using the momentum to his advantage, Naruto swung around the tree and slingshot himself toward the Jounin, his body moving at high speeds. Kakashi threw up his hands, barely blocking the punch Naruto threw at him. The blonde answered with a kick to his ribcage, only to be outdone there. The falling pair entered the tree line and hit a multitude of branches as they went, but neither gave up their hold on the other to try and retard their descent. They hit the ground with a boom, hard. Sakura ran up to the large crater where their bodies contacted the earth, and she tried to wave away the dust that rose from the gaping hole. She didn't think how someone would be able to move after a fall like that, but was quickly proven wrong when the two shinobi stumbled out of the hollow, locked in hand-to-hand combat. Sasuke had been thrown into the mix now. He had seen the aerial fight and had jumped right in when they landed. Sasuke swiped at Naruto's head. He certainly wasn't going to let the know-it-all newbie beat him at this test. Naruto expertly flipped away from the battle, his breathing slightly labored. Even his amazing amount of stamina and strength was dented with the fall. His wise cerulean eyes scanned Sasuke and Kakashi fight, who had seemed to completely forget about the blonde and pink-haired shinobi standing nearby. Sasuke was furious that Naruto showed such power so early in life, and the anger had given him a boost, turning him into a blurred ball of blue rage. Kakashi was totally focused on the boy at hand, his back towards the two remaining students. Sakura started to walk over to the blonde team but stopped short when she saw Naruto's hand reach to his back, slowly sliding his sword out of its sheath. The hilt was a simple black, little swirls of gold twisting throughout the dark, and the blade was a dark gray. Then, in a flash, Naruto was dashing towards the two, his sword skillfully held at his side, spinning in a tight circle for agility. Once he neared the two, he jumped easily into the air and with a downward stroke came down on Kakashi. Sakura's jaw dropped. She hadn't expected the boy to kill their sensei for the bell. But before she could scream in horror, she saw Naruto appear by her side, his sword returned to his back. Sasuke and Kakashi stood a little ways away, both completely unharmed and shocked, because dangling in Naruto's hand were the two bells, the strings slightly shredded from where Naruto had cut them from Kakashi's belt. We win. Then, in a flash, Naruto was dashing towards the two, his sword skillfully held at his side, spinning in a tight circle for agility. Once he neared the two, he jumped easily into the air and with a downward stroke came down on Kakashi. Sakura's jaw dropped. She hadn't expected the boy to kill their sensei for the bell. But before she could scream in horror, she saw Naruto appear by her side, his sword returned to his back. Sasuke and Kakashi stood a little ways away, both completely unharmed and shocked, because dangling in Naruto's hand were the two bells, the strings slightly shredded from where Naruto had cut them from Kakashi's belt. We win. Itachi's warning. Team 7 stood in Training Field 9's open area, Kakashi studying the three. Naruto and Sakura stood off the side, Sakura smiling softly and Naruto looking bored, as usual. Yet you could still detect a hint of satisfaction in his face. Sasuke sat on the ground, tied with his hands behind him, to one of the large wooden posts in the center of the clearing. He was glaring at the blonde, his onyx eyes blazing with fury. That bell should have been mine, you stole it from me. Sasuke snarled when Naruto glanced in his direction. The boy only shrugged. Maybe you would have gotten it if you had actual talent. Naruto muttered in reply, ignoring the Uchiha as he struggled against his bonds. I will beat you. Sasuke spat. Naruto just blinked in return, making the raven-haired teen even more furious. Kakashi sighed. Well, Naruto and Sakura passed the test, but Sasuke, I have half a mind to send you back to the academy. At this, Sasuke whipped around to face his sensei, disbelief written in his features. What? I'm way stronger than they are. Why would I be sent back while these two continue on? So I didn't get a stupid bell. That doesn't mean I should go back. Sasuke ranted, the anger in his voice the most emotion anyone had heard out of the Uchiha's mouth in a long time, because they truly understand what it means to be on a team. They found a way to work together, combining their strengths into an incredible force, and covering their weaknesses as one. You have not even begun to grasp the thought that the test wasn't about your strength, or even your smarts. It was to see how well you'd work together as a team. To see if you would actually work out in the real ninja world. Kakashi explained, an unknown gleam shining in his eyes. It was silent for a good minute, the only sound being the wind in the trees, their leaves rustling to the intense moment beneath them. Then, something happened that signified the world was ending. I guess I have a few things to work on. Sasuke sighed, his ebony eyes dulling until they were back to their normal neutral gaze. He glanced at the two staring at him in shock. And maybe you two can help, he added, though by the tone in his voice, it was taking him a lot of willpower to say all of this. And then, the apocalypse truly kicked off. Naruto smiled. It wasn't one of those fake grins just to get someone off their ass, and it wasn't one of the sarcastic smirks he was famous for giving. It was a genuine act, sincere and trustworthy, and we will if you let us. Naruto said in return, his voice soft and quiet, with no hint of sarcasm in the least. Sasuke smirked. If he had smiled back, Sakura and Kakashi probably would have had a heart attack. A ninja can have only too much surprise in one day, Kakashi sighed. Well then, I am happy to say that you all passed. Congratulations and yada yada yada. I want you all at the Hokage's tower tomorrow at 8. It's time to start some missions, he said. This is certainly going to be an interesting group. Later that night, Naruto sat in his apartment, reading some training scrolls. He was lying on his back in the middle of his living room floor, surrounded by a sea of weapons that needed sharpening, scrolls that needed reading and maps that needed memorizing. It was quite a peaceful scene and Naruto was enjoying the downtime. Suddenly, in a flash, he was up and on his feet, his sword's point at his intruder's neck. A familiar chuckle filled the room. Naruto quickly lowered his sword when he realized who it was. So sorry, Master Itachi. Naruto murmured, flicking his sword onto his back, and bowing to the man before him. It's no problem, I'm glad to see that this village hasn't affected your senses, yet. But unfortunately, I'm not here for pleasure. I'm here to talk to you about what I instructed a few days ago, Itachi said. Naruto furrowed his brow, looking a little confused. What about it? Well, what exactly did I tell you that I wanted you to do? Itachi asked. Stay distant, don't show them your true power and wait for the plan to fall into action, Naruto recited. Itachi nodded. And can you tell me what you did wrong? He said. I don't think I failed. I only used about a fourth of my knowledge, power and strength, not telling them much of anything. They found out my name by a slip of my teacher's tongue. And no one suspects a thing. I don't see why. Naruto, really? I've taught you to be more observant than this. If you don't know the reason I'm here, then I must have wasted the last 7 years of my life teaching you. Itachi yelled, his voice harsh. Naruto inwardly recoiled. He hadn't heard Itachi this angry and ruthless in forever. Especially not when it was aimed towards him. I was only showing them basic kindness. I mean, how am I supposed to gain their trust when I'm a cruel bastard all the time? Naruto asked. You are showing them warmth. I told you specifically to be detached. Itachi spat. I'm just being a normal human, but you aren't normal. You are much more extraordinary, and associating with these people will dull your chances of fulfilling your dream of becoming a legend, one that will make these people regret ever treating you the way they did. Itachi said. I don't see how a little breakfast and a helping hand is putting our plans in jeopardy, Naruto answered. Itachi sighed. It's kind. Kindness leads to friendship. Friendship leads to weakness. And weakness leads to your demise. Itachi said. Naruto nodded, but he looked a little crestfallen. So, remove myself completely? Naruto asked. Itachi smirked. Exactly. I'll be checking in now and again to keep you up to date on the plan, and to see how you're taking this meeting into effect. Until then, remember what I said. Itachi said, and then, he disappeared in a swirl of black chakra. Naruto grimaced. Whatever you say, master. The next day, Sasuke and Sakura were waiting outside the Hokage's office, both lingering there for their other teammate and sensei. We should have guessed he was going to be late again. Sakura muttered, sliding down the wall and onto the floor. Sasuke's jaw clenched. I knew I should have slept in this morning, Sasuke murmured, banging his head repeatedly against the wall behind him. Their attention was distracted from their frustration when the wind picked up in the hallway. They glanced over and in a whirl of wind, Naruto appeared, nonchalant and in person. Hey Naruto, Sasuke said, returning back to his distaste and boredom. Sakura smiled. Hi Naruto. What's up? She said cheerfully. The blonde only stared at her blankly and walked over to the other side of the door, standing away from his other two teammates. Sasuke watched him as he moved. What's up with you? He asked. Naruto didn't even spare him a glance, not speaking at all. He leaned against the wall and put his hands in his pockets, not saying a word. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged a look. They could tell something was wrong. But before they could ask him about it, Kakashi turned the corner. His mask crinkled up into a smile. Hello guys. Ready for the torture of D-rank missions? Kakashi said. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Ah yes, the agony of babysitting and weed pulling. Kakashi smirked. Oh you'll see. He chuckled as he walked into the Hokage's office. The old man was sitting at his desk, looking through the to-do pile, muttering to himself. Why can't I have an intern or something to do all this paperwork? He whispered. Kakashi cleared his throat and caught the man's attention. He looked up and a kind smile lit his face. Ah, Kakashi. Here for your team's first mission, huh? He said. He looked at the three standing next to the Jounin. Hello Sakura, Sasuke. And Naruto. Good to see that you're doing well so far, Sandaime exclaimed. Naruto only watched him with dull eyes, saying nothing. The Hokage was slightly taken aback by the boy's sudden mood change. He had heard from Kakashi that the boy had adapted quite well and even teamed up with Sakura to get the bells. But now, he seemed as cold and distant as he had the first day he was here. Has someone said something to make him act like this? The man shook himself out of his thoughts and smiled again. Okay, let's see what we have here, he said, looking through a pile of D-rank missions. He pulled out a relatively easy one and handed it to Kakashi. Here you go. You'll be cleaning out the river on the far side of town, near the hot springs. Sandaime explained while Kakashi read the paper. He nodded in understanding and tucked the information into his pocket. Got it. Let's go guys, he ordered, jumping out the nearby window. Sakura and Sasuke hesitated but Naruto just nonchalantly followed, flying out the window in one fluid-like motion. Sasuke shrugged and flipped out the window and Sakura did the same. The Hokage watched as the four leapt away across the rooftops, Naruto having no problem keeping up with Kakashi while the other two were lagging behind slightly. He had definitely had some training done, and the person had been more than just a rogue. The question was, who? River. Kakashi sat on the bank, dry and comfortable, reading his book. His three genin on the other hand were thigh-deep in water, picking up tin cans and fast food wrappers off the river's rocky bottom. This S. Sakura mumbled under her breath as she bent down to pick up an empty ramen cup. I guess Kakashi was right after all about the whole tormenting thing, Sasuke commented. Kakashi glanced up when he heard his name. Told you so? The Jounin chuckled. He turned his gaze on the other member of the team, who was a couple yards away from the rest of them, silently collecting trash. But oddly enough, the boy wasn't using his hands. He was making slight movements with his fingers and the water would bulge in places, and garbage would appear at the surface of the water, where the boy would then pick it up. When he saw Kakashi watching him, he stopped and the water returned to normal and he bent down, doing it like the other two were. Kakashi sighed. The boy was very secretive, he'll give him that. Sakura walked over to where Naruto was working, manipulating water again. Her eyes widened when she saw what he was doing. How are you doing that? She asked. Naruto didn't even look at her. She watched his expression, though it remained impassive. Are you okay? Naruto didn't answer, only watching his work. Sakura crossed her arms. I can tell something's up. Yesterday you were fine but now you're all depressed-like and you won't say a word. Sakura pointed out. Naruto sighed. Why don't you just leave me alone? Naruto muttered. Sakura gasped quietly. What? Naruto turned away from his work and looked straight at her. I don't want to talk to you, So why don't you just walk away and leave me alone? He spat, trying to be as harsh as possible. He hated it, especially since, though he would never admit it out loud, he liked Sakura and Sasuke and wanted to be friends with both his teammates. Sakura frowned and her jaw clenched. Fine then. I'll leave you alone just like you want. I can't believe I thought you were nice. You're a... she said, walking back toward Kakashi and Sasuke. Naruto watched her go but tore away and went back to his water. As Sakura was walking away, she furrowed her brow in thought. Though he had tried to hide it, she had seen that he was hesitant to say what he said, and there was even a little bit of sadness swimming inside those sapphire eyes. She didn't understand it, but it was like he didn't want to say that to her. But if he hadn't wanted to, then why did he? Sakura shook her head in confusion. She would find out, even if he didn't want her to. Once the three were done with the river, they returned to the Hokage's tower for more seemingly easy jobs. In the matter of one day, they pulled weeds out of 2 people's lawns, babysat for 1 family. We won't even go into details of how that train wreck went, and walked dogs 3 different times. By the end of the day, the ninja were sick of being ninja, at least Genin anyway. If I see one more dirty diaper, leash, or shovel, I'll scream. Sakura said as the 3 were walking home. The day had been long, boring, backbreaking, and frustrating for all. Sasuke, whose attitude had been better than it had been for years, went straight back down to the emo line. Apparently, he had thought that if Naruto could change, he could too. But when the blonde had proved that he was still his I don't need or want anyone in my life self, he reverted back to Mr. Emo Avenger. Whenever he was spoken to, he responded with his infamous HN and went back to whatever he was doing. Naruto hadn't said a single word since the river, and his eyes were usually found on the ground. They were dull and flat, no emotion at all in the cerulean irises. It got to a point where Sakura thought she must have imagined the sadness she'd seen, but she still hung on to the thought anyways. Sakura stole a sideways glance at Sasuke and a blush immediately flushed her face. So Sasuke, want to go somewhere for dinner? She asked shyly. The Uchiha only shot her a dark, empty stare and clenched his jaw. No, he replied. Sakura wilted slightly. Why not? She wondered. Sasuke subtly rolled his eyes. This whole fangirl thing was getting really annoying. Because I have better things to do. The raven-haired boy shot back. Sakura's shoulders slumped visibly, and her jade eyes dimmed a notch. Naruto observed this, and before he could even think about it or stop himself, he said it. Emo freak. Naruto muttered. Sakura glanced at him, shocked he had said anything at all. Sasuke sent a deathly glare at the blonde, and he narrowed his onyx eyes. What's you call me? Sasuke asked darkly, his tone dangerous and warning. Naruto only looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. Who called you what? The teen said, looking impassive and unknowing. Sakura suppressed a chuckle and Sasuke gritted his teeth. He scoffed and looked away. Whatever. He murmured, staring ahead at the growing darkness blankly. Chicken hair. Naruto whispered again, a small smirk lighting his face. This time, Sasuke was in front of him in a flash, his coal eyes flashing murderously. You want to try that again? He seethed. Naruto only shrugged and pushed his way past him, moving next to a now giggling Kunoichi. Sasuke growled under his breath as he moved to Naruto's other side. I'd watch it if I were you. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Naruto smirked even wider. What are you, the Incredible Hulk? He commented. Sakura's smile grew, until it was dominating her face while Sasuke's frown bent so low it looked like it was going to fall right to the ground. Naruto held up his hands defensively. Take it easy, Sasuke. I'm just kidding around. Gosh, has he always been this uptight? Did someone shove a pole up your ass, or what? Naruto joked. Sasuke snarled. You're one to talk. What about you? Yesterday you were happy, this morning you were freakish and detached, and now you're normal again? Do you have a split personality or something? The almost smile fell off Naruto's face, and his face was as expressionless as it had been all day. I have my reasons. Naruto mumbled, almost too low for anyone to hear. Well, pick a side. Because you're showing up here, oddly at the end of the year, the fact that you passed the test when no records of training were found. Everything about you is suspicious. Something's up and I think you know exactly what it is," Sasuke pointed out. Naruto flinched inwardly. He had no idea how close he really was. But he didn't let it show on the outside. No way was he going to tip anyone off, no matter what people said to persuade him. On that note, Sasuke veered off the road and headed toward the Uchiha Manor, which was almost like a ghost town. The sense of death and betrayal just wafted off the place in clouds, sending most people scattering. Sakura watched the boy go, and when he was out of sight, she went to talk to her remaining teammate, only to find that he was further down the road. She ran to catch up with him and came to a skidding stop at his side. "Hey, thanks for that back there. It made me feel a lot better," Sakura said, smiling softly. Naruto didn't respond. He only kept his empty eyes on the road. Sakura sighed. I guess that was all he was going to say for the day. Or week, who really knew? After a few minutes of walking in silence, the two came to a stop in front of Sakura's house. The front room light was on, meaning that the girl's parents were probably still waiting for her, though it was almost 10 by now. But before the pink-haired girl walked up to her door, she turned. "I don't know why you're trying to hide it, and you might be fooling other people with your facade, but I can tell you have a heart somewhere in there," she said. Naruto glanced up, a little surprise leaking into his expression. And before he could say anything, Sakura turned around and walked through the gate and up to the front door. As she was about to open the door, she snuck a glance backwards and found that Naruto was already gone, passing like a faint wind. Naruto's apartment. Naruto opened the door to his small apartment, tucking the keys into his pocket. He closed and locked the wooden door, though it wouldn't prove to be much protection if anyone tried to attack. He shuffled into the kitchen and absently pulled a cup of instant ramen off the shelf. Placing it over a low open flame, he sat down at the table, his eyes vacant. He thought he was doing good, keeping away from people. Some of the other genin teams had attempted to start a conversation with him earlier, but he had easily blown them off. But oddly, when it came down to his team, he just couldn't help saying something. He couldn't really explain it, and he didn't know why. It was really starting to vex him. After all the years of not caring for a single thing in the world besides Itachi's dream and his own, was he beginning to feel something for them too? After a few minutes of frustrating thought, he decided that it was just because they were so entertaining to mess with, that was all. But then, why had he tried to make Sakura feel better back on the walk home? He didn't actually want to connect with them, did he? He quickly shook himself away from that answer. Of course not. He had only wanted to piss Sasuke off, that was all. But even after all of that, it still didn't feel right. He made a final analysis that he just didn't want to deal with a 12-year-old soap opera after all of that good doing. And with that, the blonde fell asleep at the table, to smell of burning styrofoam filling the room. 5 days later, the past couple of days followed pretty much the same as the first. Naruto, being distanced from, well, everyone. Sasuke, staying in the emo, angry Avenger character he had created for himself. And Sakura, the fangirl that got shot down every night. She had persisted on the fact that Naruto had a heart the entire time, but hadn't gotten a word out of him since the first night as a team. The team had met outside the Hokage's office for another day of D-rank missions when Kakashi showed up, on time for once, and told them to follow him. They were now in the Hokage's briefing room, with the Sandaime, Iruka, and one of the council, Danzo, staring at them from across a long table. The Sandaime frowned slightly. Are you sure they're ready for this, Kakashi? I mean, they graduated only a week ago, the old man said, playing with a scroll in front of him. The one-eyed Jounin nodded. I know they can handle it. Besides, it's only an escort. This got all three of the Genin's attention. We're going on a C-rank mission? Sakura asked, the excitement in her voice bare. Kakashi smirked. See? Totally ready. The man added. Iruka looked shocked and Danzo looked completely appalled. But Hokage-sama. They only just became shinobi a few days ago. I don't think they're ready for a C rank just yet. Iruka protested. That's not your call to make, Iruka. Kakashi is their teacher now, and if he feels that they're ready, then we have no place to argue. Sandaime replied. Iruka still looked like he wanted to disagree. He sat back in his chair with a sigh. But Danzo still had to voice his opinion on the whole thing. With all due respect, are you sure that we should be letting Naruto out of the village? I mean, he hasn't been here long. The old man scowled, saying Naruto's name like it was the plague. The blonde noticed this and smirked sarcastically at the council member, causing him to frown deeper. The Sandaime nodded. I see your point, but the boy has proven to be quite the shinobi. I think he deserves a little slack in that department, and they all deserve a break from the D-rank missions, the Hokage replied, his voice firm, meaning the decision was final. Kakashi smiled slightly in victory and stepped up to the desk to receive the mission details. Meanwhile, the three genin were basking in their joy. Awesome! I've never heard of genin getting C ranks this soon into the game. Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke smirked, and his eyes portrayed his enjoyment in the idea, and even Naruto was slightly jazzed about the ordeal. At that moment Kakashi returned, slipping the scroll into his star pouch. Now your client is right outside, so let's bring him in, shall we? The Sandaime said cheerfully, nodding to the ANBU at the door. They bowed in return and opened the door, letting a figure inside. He had shaggy gray hair and his face was starting to wrinkle with age. His beard and mustache were also faded in color, and he had small glasses. He was pretty burly for an old man, and he wore simple workman's clothes. The man was carrying a whiskey bottle in his hand, so it was obvious he had been drinking. He narrowed his eyes as if he had trouble seeing the four even though they were right in front of him. These are the shinobi that are supposed to protect Mio on the way home? They're nothing but runts, he said, his voice slurred and heavy with alcohol. He stumbled over to where Naruto was standing and gave him a once-over. This kid ain't even good enough to be my armrest, he added. Naruto's jaw clenched, and he grabbed a metal bar that was hanging from the man's belt. Most likely his weapon from the journey here. Without any difficulty or straying, he bent it into a circle, looped it back on the man's belt, and crossed his arms over his chest. The drunk's jaw dropped, and he almost dropped his half-empty bottle. Kakashi couldn't help smiling when he saw the man's face. How he loved his genin team. The man licked his lips and backed up 2 steps, heading away from the blonde. They'll do. Meet me at the gate in 1 hour, the man said, retreating down the hall. Sakura giggled openly once the client was out of hearing range, and even Sasuke smirked. Sandaime was smiling. It was certainly his favorite part of the day so far. Alright then, you heard him. 1 hour, and don't be late, Kakashi instructed. The three nodded and walked out the door, on their way to pack up for the mission. Kakashi sighed. Interesting boy you've got there, the Hokage commented. The Jounin smiled. Definitely one to keep a close watch on. Konoha's gates. The team walked out of Konoha's limits, the gates looming highly behind them. Their client, Tazuna, hadn't drunk anything before they left, and his earlier tipsiness had vanished. He was back to what they assumed was his normal self, cheerful and kind. He still had the ring of metal on his belt, and every so often would glance at the blonde uncertainty, as if he expected him to bend a tree like that too. 30 minutes after being on the road, they were traveling on a simple dirt path, carved out of the forest from years of travelers and traders. Kakashi and Tazuna were talking about random things, including the release date on some book called Ika Ika Paradise. Sasuke was playing with a shuriken, spinning it on his finger and throwing it into the air, trying to catch it without chopping off one of his fingers in the process. Sakura was taking in the pure scenery, her expression filled with awe and wonder, as if she had never been outside the village before, which might have been true. And last but not least, Naruto was just looking around nonchalantly, taking in everything at once. He was trying to pinpoint and identify certain sounds in the trees. It was an exercise Itachi had taught him on their travels so he could train while they walked. Now he was doing it for kicks, seeing how many different things he could find. It was during this that he saw a small puddle near his side of the road. His eyes darted around the rest of the area, observing the grass, trees, and sky. The grass was green yet slightly crunchy, meaning it hadn't been wet in a long time. Every step he took kicked up dust, meaning the ground was bone dry. Meaning there hadn't been rain for weeks, so that wasn't any ordinary puddle. Naruto shot a glance at Kakashi, and one look told the blonde that he knew too. The teen swiftly walked ahead and stopped at the edge, waiting, as if he had seen something and was now waiting for the rest of the group to catch up. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a hand reach out of the puddle, a kunai outstretched and aimed at his leg. In fluid-like motion, he caught the kunai in his foot and stuck it in tight. He winced slightly when he felt the blade break skin and he shuddered when it hit bone. But he didn't stop. He kicked upward, sending the hand's owner out of the puddle and across the path, landing in a heap on the other side. Instantly, his partner jumped up and the puddle vanished. By now, the rest of the team had run up and were ready, Tazuna safely behind Kakashi. Naruto knelt down and harshly ripped the knife out of his foot without a sound. Blood glistened from the tip to almost halfway to the handle, and the gaping hole in the blonde's foot was releasing a steady stream of the crimson liquid. The teen ignored the sting and threw the kunai away, hearing it clatter in the bushes. Sakura looked at him worriedly, but he didn't show any pain or discomfort, only concentration. The two metal-clad ninja were on their feet now, and with a whip of their arms, sent four long chains hurtling at them. Kakashi jumped in front and took it, the chains wrapping tightly around his body. But before he could make a move or even say a word, they constricted and sliced the Joun into bits. All four of the people's eyes widened as they watched the 26-year-old man killed right in front of them. Sasuke and Naruto glanced at each other, and with a brisk nod, the raven-haired boy dashed for the first one, kunai drawn. Naruto turned back to Sakura, who was still staring horror-stricken at the place where Kakashi once stood only a second ago. "Sakura! Protect Tazuna!" he muttered. The girl nodded and Naruto rushed into the fight, heading for the second one. With a quick look, he could see that Sasuke was holding up pretty well on his end, which was good news for him. Now he only had to worry about his opponent. He jumped into the air, dodging a punch the man had thrown at him. It connected with the ground and the earth split, a crater forming around where the ninja's hand had hit. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Note to self: look out for inhuman strength. He flipped from his aerial assault into a bone-breaking roundhouse kick. It made contact with the man's face, who was surprised that a 12-year-old would make a full front attack. The blow sent him stumbling backwards, his arms flailing to keep balance. Naruto didn't pause for him to regain his stature. He landed and stayed close to the ground, coming up and pushing off, hitting the enemy ninja right under the jaw. His head snapped back, a little trickle of blood coming from the corner of his mouth. The blonde kept up with his flight and tucked in, neatly flipping over the man's body. He landed behind him, got a good grasp on the straps of leather holding his metal armor together, and with chakra-enhanced strength, threw him toward the other shinobi. "Hit the deck, Sasuke!" Naruto shouted. The Uchiha hit the ground just as the rogue collided with his buddy, sending them both into the tree line behind them. Naruto jogged up to where Sasuke was picking himself off the earth. They both threw out a stance and waited, standing in between Tazuna and where they had landed. After a few seconds, one of them burst out of the trees, his metal-encased fist outstretched. Sasuke charged to meet him, but Naruto stopped short. There were two of them. Where did the other one go? Reality hit him, and his eyes widened. He whirled around in time to see the second one come out of the trees a few yards down from where the first one had emerged, though this one's target was different. He was headed straight towards Sakura and Tazuna. The pink-haired girl raised a kunai in defense, and her emerald eye glowed with ferociousness. She was ready to fight, but Naruto knew better. He had just been fighting this guy, and he knew that with the speed he was getting plus the factors of his freakish strength and heavy metal armor, it would make a deathly hit if you took it full on, and she didn't look like she was going to move. Naruto didn't even think, he just moved. He poured a hell of a lot of speed into his feet at that moment. He knew he'd pay for it later, but he wasn't just going to stand by and watch her get killed. The Rouge raised his arm, a small dagger appearing from an opening in his fist, and just as he started to slam down, Naruto skidded to a stop in front of Sakura and Tazuna, with no time to prepare a counter or defense. Demon of the Mist. The Rouge's armed hand smashed down, slicking through the blonde's hand, going right through the center of the teen's palm. It didn't end up going through the other side of his hand, only burrowing itself through the arm, up to the handle. Naruto grimaced slightly with the pain of the blade, but didn't pay it much attention. Behind him, Sakura seemed to have finally processed what had happened. She was staring in horror as blood began to flow freely down the boy's hand and arm. It dripped onto the ground, making a small pool really quickly. Sasuke's eyes widened. He had never seen the teen get even a scratch on him, and yet here he was, practically bleeding to death. "Naruto, oh god, are you okay?" Sakura whispered, scooting closer. But before she could say anything more, Naruto used his other hand to push her back, not harshly, but still in a firm way that meant stay. His teeth were gritted in rage and his eyes were a deadly blue, not the bored, dull sapphire they usually were. "He's my fight. Stay back with Tazuna," Naruto ordered, leaping into action. He pulled away harshly from the ninja, the blade ripping out of his hand. The sound was sickening alone, not to mention the fact that this action only made the wound bleed heavier. But the teen didn't even bother to stop and inspect it, only dashing into the fight. Over by Sasuke, the other Rouge was already out cold and tied up tightly with wires. The Uchiha stood by, watching the battle unfold calmly. He knew better than to get into the middle of things, especially with someone as dangerous as Naruto. Who knew how bad he was when encouraged with a rage as big as Konoha itself? Naruto ran at a speed so fast that if you blinked you would have missed it. He used his momentum to his immediate advantage, jumping into the air and wheeling around, roundhouse kicking the man in the face, his foot enhanced with an assload of chakra. The shinobi was sent flying backwards, hitting a tree and shattering it, its top half almost disconnecting from its lower base. Naruto didn't wait for his opponent to get a grip, much less his feet. He attacked again, hauling him up by the front of his shirt and without a word, whipped around on his heel and threw him across the clearing. The man's body landed heavily, and the air rushed out of his lungs with a whoosh. He rolled to a stop almost 10 feet from where he landed and picked himself halfway off the ground, his arm holding his weight alone. He coughed, and a mouthful of blood came out with it. Naruto walked over slowly to confront him, his eyes narrowed, deep in thought it seemed. The rogue turned, and when he saw his attacker approaching, the fire in his eyes apparent, he whimpered, "Please man, go easy. It wasn't our idea to attack you guys. If we had known they had such a powerhouse traveling with them, we wouldn't have done it, I swear," the man explained, his voice rushing and his eyes darting around, looking for an escape route. Naruto stopped, only a few feet away from where the ninja was cowering. His brow furrowed and a look of minor interest crossed his face. "If it wasn't your notion, then whose was it?" the teen asked. The shinobi instantly looked regretful. He had said something out loud that he should have had. Naruto came a step closer, making the ninja flinch. "Who hired you to take out the old man?" Naruto asked again, his voice hard and demanding. The man swallowed and looked hesitant, but not unwilling. As long as he didn't have to go up against the bad genin again, he would tell them probably just about anything. But just as he looked like he was going to crack, he sneered. He leapt up and jumped over the blonde's head in a high jump. He ran over to his partner, snatched him up, and ran for the cover of the forest line. No doubt his way of escaping. Naruto cursed under his breath. He won't be getting far. Naruto promised, running at a low speed for him, but still fast enough in the reality of a normal genin. But before he could get far enough, a hand restraining him. He looked back, ready to take out its owner, but his defenses were cut short when he saw who exactly had stopped him. Sakura stared back at him, her eyes soft. "Just let them go. I don't think they'll bother us again," she said, her grip on his arm tightening. Naruto sighed inwardly. He could easily shake her off and go after them. But then what would have been the point of the gaping hole in his hand if he just gravely injured the person he had just saved? Speaking of which, he couldn't actually believe he had done that. Sure, he hadn't wanted her to die and all. She didn't deserve to be taken out of the game so early. But to jump in the way of an oncoming attack? To take the hit for her, to protect her? That was something heroes did, something nice people did. But he was emotionless, ruthless. He was cold and harsh, wasn't he? Naruto shook himself out of the thoughts that were swimming in his head. He didn't have time to think about that stuff like that now. He'd just have to wait until later to beat himself up about the whole thing, though he wondered what Master Itachi would say when he found out. He prayed with all his heart that he wouldn't. That wouldn't be pretty. Well, it looks like I didn't need to interfere after all," a voice said, coming from the opposite wall of trees. The four turned to see Kakashi walking out of the shadows, his mask raised in what they could only guess was a grin. Sakura's jaw dropped and even Sasuke looked a little surprised. Hadn't he died, turned into a pile of ribbons? Kakashi-sensei, what's going on? Sakura asked. Sasuke walked up to join them, his coal eyes working through things a million miles an hour, seeming to look for an answer about what had just happened. Kakashi smiled sheepishly and put his hands behind his head. I wanted to see how you'd react in a situation where your sensei had just been killed right in front of you. If you'd been completely lost, if you'd last more than a minute, or if you would survive, in great and incredible ways. He explained. He glanced at Sasuke. Like you, for instance. You did great on the way you took out that rogue, using his weak points as your heaviest attack spots. The idea of jamming kunai up into the connection lines between their armor was a great idea. Good to think on your feet. Now he looked at Sakura, his eyes appraising. Even though a great and horrifying tragedy had just occurred in front of you, you responded to orders and listened to them, doing an excellent job at them too. You stood your ground when faced with an oncoming attacker, willing to give your life to protect our client. It takes guts to do that, and I am very impressed. A lot of people would have run if faced with the same situation, but you held on. Very remarkable, he said, gaining a smile from the pink-haired kunoichi, and last, he turned to Naruto. And now our smart aleck, split personality, mysterious member of the team. Kakashi started. Naruto smirked slightly. Well, don't I feel loved with that opening statement? He muttered, his eyes glowing softly with what could have been laughter. Or he was still a little enraged from the large cut he had gotten in his hand from the rogue, who had just escaped, more likely the last one. You have been extremely tense these past few days, distanced from the rest of humanity, trying not to connect with anyone at all. Frankly, I don't really know why, and you never will. Naruto mumbled quietly, interrupting the jounin. Kakashi sighed but continued, but when someone on your team needed you, or if you needed to step up to the plate, you were all over it. I saw what happened when that Rouge tried to take out Sakura and the bridge builder. Taking a hit like that, he said, pointing to Naruto's right hand, take a lot of courage and a lot of strength to be able to fight like that afterward. You are definitely a mystery, but an interesting one at that. Kakashi said, grinning. Of course, Naruto didn't return the action, but his cerulean eyes seemed to be filled with more than boredom at the moment. They could all see the pleasure and happiness swimming in those irises at the comment he had just received. Now, Kakashi turned his attention to the bridge builder, who looked a little guilty at the moment. Those were at least chunin, maybe even special jounin. Either way, they were way too highly skilled for a low C-rank mission. Maybe there's something you'd better tell us? Kakashi asked, his eyes narrowed. Tazuna sighed. I'm a bridge builder for a town on the coast of the Wave Country. We've been building a bridge that would connect with the Fire Country's nearest shore, being able to bring in more trade. But soon after we started, a man named Gato sent a lot of thugs to threaten us to stop the process. He had supplied the town with their supplies for a long while, but his prices were rising and the number and quality was dropping just as fast. Soon, everything has at least tripled in price, but there is barely enough to go around. I know if we can just finish the bridge, then we could stop relying on Gato for survival, but he's not too happy about that. So when I left town for a trading trip, he must have found it the perfect opportunity to just kill me off completely. If I die, the whole bridge goes under, Tazuna explained, his voice low and grave. Kakashi nodded. He'd heard little bits of talk like this lately when he'd been on a mission out near the Wave Country border. Well, this mission is still way too out of range for my team. And you only paid for a C rank. Kakashi pointed out. I only have enough for a C rank. The bridge builder muttered in reply. Still, the fact that they were chunin and the fact that there will most likely be more, that bumps it up to a B rank, which genin aren't qualified for. Kakashi countered. Naruto stepped up. Cause you know, that's just what he'd been doing a lot lately. So we're just going to abandon him in the middle of the woods while bunches of high CL shinobi are after him? What kind of ninja would we be if we did that? Naruto asked, saying more in one statement than he had since he got there. And shockingly, there was emotion in his voice. We can't do that, Kakashi-sensei, no matter how hard the mission is. Sakura agreed. Sasuke only nodded to show his opinion. To say that Kakashi was surprised was an understatement. He was flabbergasted. Though his team had shown outstanding teamwork on the belt test. Well, 2 of them had at least. And only a few minutes ago, they gave a glimpse of what most ninja didn't develop until further into the game. And for most, they would never ever get that far. Well then, it's your choice. Do you want to continue on or turn back? Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto exchanged a glance and nodded unanimously. We better get moving then before more of them pour out of the trees. Naruto sighed, shouldering his pack. He had thrown it on the ground the instant Kakashi had been taken out. And then the group moved out. Kakashi was walking up front with Tazuna, talking about the bridge and who had been attacking in the past couple of weeks. Sasuke, as usual, was walking by himself, staring straight ahead or at his feet. Sakura had tried to start a conversation with him, but after about 10 minutes and not a single word, she had moved over to the side, completely silent. Naruto took up the rear, and did a 360 every couple of minutes. He was still bothered with the feeling that this wasn't over yet. He thought it best to keep his eyes open, because if what he thought was going to happen, happened, well, then Itachi's plan might just end there. Sakura noticed the boy stop, scanning the trees, his eyes searching and narrow. She fell back from the group, moving to stand next to him. "What are you doing?" she asked. Naruto didn't spare her a glance, still scouring the shadows like it was his job. "Nothing," he answered absently, starting to walk again. Sakura lightly danced next to him, her eyes on his right hand. The blood flow had slowed considerably, becoming nothing more than a small trickle, leaving a drop every 50 feet or so now. Sakura still couldn't believe he had done that for her, jumping in the way and taking the blow that would have probably killed her. Naruto caught her staring and followed her gaze to his gaping hand. "I could take care of that for you. I've picked up a little medical stuff from my mom," Sakura offered. Naruto shot a sideways glance at the girl but didn't quite look at her. "Nah, it'll be fine on its own," Naruto replied. He knew fully well that if he kept it uncovered and untreated for much longer, it would most likely get infected, making him weak, which wouldn't be good. But he didn't want to risk a run-in with his enemy kindness. Sakura scowled. "Liar. You know just as much as I do that it's bad. You're just too macho to admit it." "Fine, I'll do it as an act of gratitude, that way you didn't even ask for it," she said, pulling him over to the side of the road. She held the outer part of his hand carefully, inspecting the hole. Naruto watched her work, noticing how softly she treated him, how careful she was, like she actually cared. "Stop that. Don't even start. You're too different from everyone else. If they knew exactly what you were, they would hate you just like the rest of the village. That's why you decided to seal off all emotions all those years ago. Just because you're shocked about the kindness you think you're picking up, doesn't mean that all of your training should go out the window. Remember what Master Itachi said, stay detached." They would never understand. While Naruto was giving himself a pep talk, Sakura had cleaned and bandaged his hand. She lightly taped the last end into place, and then smiled in satisfaction with her work. She released the boy's hand and he dropped it to his side, his expression blank but forced. Or maybe she was imagining it. "Thanks," he muttered, though he sounded sincere. The two started walking again, working a little harder to catch up with the retreating backs of their teammates and client. Sakura sighed. "Well, here goes nothing. Thanks for that back there. That could have ended up bad," Sakura said quietly. Naruto shrugged. "Couldn't let you die, right?" he replied, his voice soft. Sakura smiled. "I don't think so. You say you don't have a heart and that you don't care, but it's obvious you do," the Kunoichi insisted, grinning. Naruto looked at her incredulously. "Really?" "Right. And Sasuke is actually a happy, loving person," he shot back sarcastically. Sakura giggled and Naruto smirked lightly, but quickly wiped it clean off his face as soon as it appeared. "You can't fool me. First you helped me get the bells back at the field. Then you cheered me up when we were walking home the other night, and today you saved me from my death," Sakura listed. Naruto grimaced inwardly. Crap, who knew he had done so much good doing? He was never going to hear the end of it now. Doing all that stuff is natural for humans. Naruto shot back. Sakura nodded. "True, But you keep trying to keep your distance from all the people in the village like they hate you or something." Naruto flinched when she said this, but luckily, she didn't see it. "You say you don't have any emotions and that you don't have a heart for anyone or anything. Yet when someone's in trouble, you just can't not help them." The girl continued. Naruto sighed. That feeling was only his old emotions trying to rise up and take control again. But he wasn't stupid, because that wasn't gonna happen. Ever. Slip up. "I can promise you, it won't happen again." The blonde answered, his voice firm but tinged with a little uncertainty. He didn't know if he would be able to repress those old feelings, or if he even could, but he had to try. Itachi's plan depended on it. His dream depended on it. "I doubt it. You'll do it again because though you won't admit it, you have emotions. For some reason though, you're holding yourself back, trying to detach yourself from life in all ways. And I don't know as of yet, but I'll figure it out eventually," Sakura promised. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Right. Good luck with that one. And when I do, I'll help you out of it." The teen's eyes widened at this, shock completely taking over his face. She had promised to help him out of whatever dilemma he was in. That was big talking and she barely even knew him. It had to be too good to be true, but the genuine care in her voice just made him believe her somehow. And that made him even more determined to keep the truth from her. "Look, there's nothing going on, nothing to worry about. I simply think that emotions hold a ninja back, so I got rid of them. Easy as that. Nothing to help with," the blonde assured, being careful to keep his voice confident and unwavering, trying to be as convincing as possible. For a few seconds she only stared searchingly at him, but lowered her gaze. "All right, if you're sure about that," she whispered. Naruto nodded, glad that the conversation was over. They walked in silence for a minute or so, but soon, Sakura's eyes lit up with realization. "What did you mean naturally for humans? You say it like you're not," she pointed out. Naruto almost made the mistake of stopping dead in his tracks, but smartly, kept a steady pace, not even a falter in his step. He smiled inwardly. Nice going, man. But then he was back in reality, realizing that he was facing a question that he had absolutely no answer to. He was cornered, but before he could say anything, a glint from above caught his attention. He looked up and without warning flashed to the side, knocking Sakura to the ground. He rolled down next to her, dust kicking up. Sakura looked over at him, a ferocious glare in her eyes. Just as she was about to chew him out for throwing her to the floor, he was moving again, dragging her up with him. Ahead, she saw Kakashi and Sasuke surrounding Tazuna, kunai drawn. Naruto whipped the girl behind him and backed up until Sakura's back was about 3 feet from a tree. And the tree had a 6-foot sword dug halfway into its trunk. Her eyes widened when she realized why Naruto had pushed her onto the road. The blade had been flung at them, and if the blonde hadn't seen it and acted, she would have been decapitated. The second time in a day that the emotionless, heartless boy had saved her life. Naruto raised his arms in a defensive stance, his sapphire eyes flashing around dangerously, taking in everything at once. His hands were clenching and unclenching into fists, and his muscles were coiled. He glanced back at the pink-haired girl. "Are you okay? Or did I hurt you too badly from that tackle?" he asked, still keeping an eye on the trees from where the sword had first appeared. Sakura nodded. "Yeah. Scared the crap out of me, but fine," she answered, though her voice shook a little. "What's going on?" Naruto gritted his teeth. "Something I really don't want to deal with right now," he replied, venom dripping from his words. Like he knew who was coming. Sakura was about to ask what he was talking about, but the words caught in her throat as a figure walked out of the forest. He ignored Kakashi, Sasuke and Tazuna, walking directly for Naruto and Sakura. The girl bit her lip and tasted blood. The man before then was scary in all meanings of the word. He was tall and his face was almost completely wrapped in bandages, from the nose down. His eyes were charcoal black, cold and dull. He radiated pure killing intent, no mercy showing in his character in the least. He was the definition of a killing machine, and now he was coming straight for them. Previously, he was tall and his face was almost completely wrapped in bandages, from the nose down. His eyes were charcoal black, cold and dull. He radiated pure killing intent, no mercy showing in his character in the least. He was the definition of a killing machine, and now he was coming straight for them, an old face. Sakura's heart rate sped to an erratic pace, the sound echoing in her ears like a pounding drum roll. The color drained from her face and she felt a tremor in her knees. She had only just seen this man once and already she was terrified. Naruto gritted his teeth together so forcefully he thought he heard a tooth crack. His muscles tensed, and his senses immediately went on red alert. Every little move was taken in, nothing underestimated. The man smirked coldly at the blonde. Long time no see, Naruto. It's been quite too long. Well, isn't this just a heartwarming reunion? The ninja spoke, his voice hard and chilling, sending shivers down all their spines. All but Naruto, who stood firm and still as stone, his eyes unmoving. Can't say I'm happy to see you, Zabuza. The blonde answered in a low tone. Sakura glanced uneasily at her teammate in front of her. Naruto, do you know him? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. The blonde only clenched his jaw and tightened his hands into fists, the knuckles turning a ghostly white from exertion. Go by Kakashi and Sasuke, protect Tazuna. Naruto muttered in return, completely ignoring the former question. The pink-haired girl found the strength to snort. And leave you here by yourself? Please, she replied, shocked at the unwavering voice in her response. Naruto sighed. Listen to me. I have a better chance of lasting against him without having to worry about keeping you out of harm's way. Do me a favor and go. The teen shot back, his cerulean eyes hard and unmoving. The girl wanted to argue more, but just as she opened her mouth to speak, Zabuza moved, vanishing in a streak of black. He reappeared between the two and his sword, his speed uncanny. Tearing the weapon out of the tree, he lashed around, aiming to deliver a blow that would serve both their heads from their bodies. Naruto pushed Sakura out of the way and slid his own blade out of its sheath, the dark gray rapier gleaming in the sunlight. He raised his arm and the shrill sound of metal hitting metal rang throughout the clearing. Naruto skidded back a few inches when the blades connected. Zabuza's sword was much bigger and denser than his was, making it outmatched by a few notches. But he sure as hell wasn't giving up. Naruto flipped away, his gaze shooting over to where Kakashi and the others were. To his satisfaction, he saw that the girl had taken his advice, rejoining the Konoha team. She was whispering something to the Jounin leader, and his eyes narrowed in suspicion, his stare flickering in their direction. Naruto sighed. Great. There goes his cover. His mind was snapped back into the fight when Zabuza's blade cleaved down on his right side, burrowing itself into the ground and missing him by only a few inches. Naruto untucked his body and slipped into a back handspring, landing nimbly about a foot away from where the weapon had broken the earth's crust. Zabuza moved again, his steely eyes narrowed. He slammed his sword back into its place behind his back and went through a string of seals. Sway Tun! Hahanryu! The shinobi called in a deep voice. He straightened out his palms and from them came two rapid, bone-crushing torrents of rushing water. Naruto gritted his teeth and sheathed his blade as well. Thanks to Itachi's restrictions, there was no freaking way to counter it. So he simply slipped flexibly to the ground and rolled out of the way, avoiding the water completely. Or so he thought. The mist shinobi changed his course and sent them back in Naruto's direction. The blonde pressed his hands firmly on the ground, and just as he was about to spring off the ground and out of harm's way, the white water doubled their speed and slammed into him with great force. He was flung back and smashed into the base of a tree, the wind rushing out of his lungs in a whoosh. Zabuza began to advance and Naruto picked himself off the ground, coughing up a mouthful of water. Sasuke made a move in the blonde's direction, but Kakashi held out a restraining hand. The Uchiha glanced quizzically at him. He's too high for any of you, including Naruto. I'm going to jump in as soon as I see an opening and get him out of there, Kakashi stated, his eyes never leaving the battle. Naruto wiped the water out of his eyes in time to see a glint of sun reflecting off the giant sword being brought down upon him. The teen rolled out of the way just as the blade connected with the bark where his back had been. It chopped through the thick base, the massive tree groaning in response. Shards of wood flew in all directions, some of the larger chunks burying themselves into the ground. Naruto flowed from his roll into a run, backpedaling away from the missing nin. Zabuza turned on him again, smiling coldly. "You've improved some. I wonder what he's been teaching you," he said out loud, his teeth gleaming. Naruto cursed under his breath. He had to take care of him before he revealed anything about his master. Zabuza formed a seal in the center of his chest and recited, "Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu." 5 water clones rose from the ground, taking on the form of Zabuza, all with the same, menacing smiles. With a wave of his hand, all ran in Naruto's direction, swords drawn. Naruto ed. He had dealt with water clones before no problem, but with his restrictions and the mysterious way his power seemed to be seeping from his body, he wasn't quite so confident right now. But he drew his sword anyway, ready to put up a fight. The blonde met all 5 weapons with a clash, small sparks flying from the collision points. Naruto's strength wavered with the force of impact, his arms shaking slightly. The clones all smirked and 2 broke away, aiming a blow on either side of him. Naruto's eyes flashed and with a streak of black, he jumped. The 5 blades smashed into each other, and Naruto landed in the center where they all crossed. He flipped expertly over their heads, making a move back to the tree line, but while he was still in midair, a fist connected with the side of his head, sending him across the field in a flash. He collided with a large rock, the crack from the impact making all 3 Konoha ninja to cringe. Naruto opened his eyes, his head shooting with pain from where the stone had been smashed into the back of his skull. Through blurred vision, he could make out the 5 clones melting to the ground, their smiles remaining. Which meant that the real Zabuza had moved. Only a second after the boy's impact, Zabuza was beside him again, kicking him roughly in the side. Naruto skidded across the ground, rolling repeatedly. But the ninja was still with him. The man flashed over and whipped out his sword. He smashed him in the side again with the butt of his sword, like he was playing golf. Naruto finally rolled to a stop right at Kakashi's feet, his body torn and bloody. The 4 could only stare in horror at their teammate. They still couldn't believe what had happened. Naruto pushed himself to a sitting position, wiping the back of his hand along the right side of his jaw, smearing the line of blood that was falling from his mouth. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself, forcing himself into a stand. He took a step forward, back in Zabuza's direction. That's when the rest of the team was knocked out of their daze. Sakura grabbed his arm, careful to avoid the places where he had been cut, and Sasuke moved in front of him, his onyx gaze hard and unmoving. Kakashi moved to his other side, his one eye watching him intently. "Naruto, stop. You can't keep going like this. He's just too much, even for you," he murmured. The blonde gritted his teeth. He knew he could take him. He had before. What the hell was wrong now? But Kakashi was right. He felt even weaker than he did a minute ago. Reluctantly, he relaxed, falling back towards Tazuna. The 3 breathed a sigh of relief and Kakashi faced Sasuke and Sakura. "Sasuke, guard Tazuna. He's Zabuza's target to begin with, no matter what history Naruto and him might have," he said, his gaze flickering to Naruto for a moment. "Sakura, you'll be able to heal some of Naruto's wounds, though I don't doubt that we'll have to stop in the port and find a doctor to get him fully patched up," he instructed. The 2 nodded in reply, moving to their respective jobs, Sasuke in front of Tazuna and Sakura next to Naruto. Kakashi turned to the missing ninja, who was watching them with somewhat of an amused smirk. "You're my opponent now," Kakashi growled, drawing a kunai from his holster. Zabuza smirked, and drew his blade as well. Sakura glanced up from her job. "Don't let him cast that attack on you," she reminded him quietly. Their sensei only nodded in response before dashing into the fight. Naruto shot her a quizzical look. "Attack?" he asked. Sakura grimaced. "I guess you were too focused on something else. You should have felt it coming. He cast an attack that would steal all of your strength, and give it to his body during a fight," she explained. Naruto's eyes widened. That explained it. He remembered back from when he and Itachi had met them on the road. He recalled that they spent the night together in the woods, swapping information about the areas they had come from. It came to attention that Zabuza said he had been working on a jutsu that would take all his opponent's power from their beings and give it to him. He mentally slapped himself for not thinking about that the second he felt his power draining away. He turned his eyes away from the working girl, examining the fight. Kakashi was skilled, he had to admit it. His speed was great and his moves were fluid and effective, something Naruto still couldn't piece together to make foolproof formations. His attacks were strong and quick, like a deadly viper making his bite and pulling away before the enemy could kill him. Maybe Konoha wasn't all horrible. Kakashi flipped away, his cold black eyes concentrated. He jumped out into the open water, landing almost silently on the water's surface. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He had always wanted to learn that, walking on water. But Itachi had always said it was a waste of time, that it wouldn't contribute to reaching his dream at all. He still wished he knew how. Zabuza stopped mid-run and smiled. He crouched, and in a flash he was next behind Kakashi, forming a fast string of seals. Surin no Jutsu, Zabuza said, and Kakashi's eyes widened. Before he could even try to make a move, the water around him rose and collapsed, creating a sphere of water around the shinobi. Kakashi internally cursed himself for being so stupid as to walk straight out into the water, the place Zabuza was highly skilled with. Zabuza smirked and with his remaining hand, created another water clone. The copy Zabuza rose out a bulge in the water in front of the two jounin. His wicked gleam pointed directly in the direction of the genin and the bridge builder. He stretched to his full height and began to stalk slowly towards them, his eyes cold and full of killing intent. Kakashi's gaze moved to his team, his expression one of panic. Run! Just because it's a water clone doesn't mean that he doesn't have Zabuza's strength. Take the bridge builder and get out of here. Leave me! He called out. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke exchanged a glance, the words flowing easily between them. They looked back at their client, expression steady. He sighed. It's my fault we're in this situation and I need to repent for it. Do whatever you need to do to save your sensei, he said, answering their silent plea. Naruto stood up, moving next to Sasuke, though Sakura watched him with a reluctant eye. Naruto and Sasuke shot each other the same and looked and smiled. This'll be fun, Sasuke commented.